Hello everyone, and welcome back to yet another edition of my One Piece journey. Thank you very much for joining me once again, and today we're going to be covering part 2 of the Alabasta arc. Now, I don't know if this is going to be the final part of the Alabasta arc videos. I have finished the entire arc, so there's no problem with that. But I just don't know if I'll be able to fit all that I need to say into one video. It's a bit hard to gauge, even considering that I did the whole part 1. So we'll see. If I keep this in and don't edit this out, then I guess I was able to do it, and you can find out that way. But yeah, we'll see how it goes. Just before we get started, just a reminder, if you would like early access to the next One Piece review, the next arc, I haven't even started it yet, I don't know what it's called, I don't know anything about it, but if you would like access to my review of it, you can do that by getting early access through Patreon. The links are in the description and pinned comment. If you'd like to join into the streams, where I read every single chapter live and react to it and discuss it, you can do that. You can follow my Twitch. If you'd like to join the Discord where people talk about One Piece, my journey through it, everything unrelated to me with regards to One Piece, tons of other stuff, you can join that. Same thing. And that aside, yeah, let's get into the AJP's comments for this video before getting into Alabasta arc. Oh, just one more thing. I'm gonna have to record this video in 2 parts, so there will be another outfit change. I'll wear a different shirt somewhere in the middle of this video. And just so you're aware, all the AJP's comments that I'm going to go through here were in response to the Drum Island video. Just My Opinion says, among the ones who leave their legacy for their pupils, Belmer, Zeph, Hiruluk, etc., which has had the most powerful moment for you? The funny thing about this is that I've done my character rankings, you guys know it. The thing is, while I have Hiruluk and Zeph, even though I have them ahead of Belmer, and Belmer's still wonderful, I actually think Belmer's moment and her sacrifice hit me the hardest. It's very hard because Hiruluk's was like a consistent drip feed of really awesome stuff culminating in his death. Zeph and what he did for Sanji and all of that was really moving as well, but something about the way that the flashback with Belmer was presented just really got to me, and I think it was really effective, and if I had to choose one moment, not the character themselves, I think it would have to go to Belmer's during Arlong Park. And just to jump in here in between questions, I've been told that there were a few AJP's comments that were really good and the mods wanted me to read out, but they couldn't because they hinted at future events. Again, please don't put anything about future events that would alter my expectations in any way. That's considered a spoiler, and the mods are just going to hide it from me and or delete the comments. So it would be a shame for me to not be able to read some comments if you confirm or deny things that happen in the future, so just be aware of that. But yes, the next comment is from Yamabu. I must say I love the way you approach these reviews. It's almost as if you embody the whole spirit of Luffy into the reviews. You don't want anyone to influence or plan out your reading experience. It's your journey, you decide the course. Just like the free-spirited way of Luffy. Awesome to see. With that said, here's my question. That's a lovely, lovely analogy. And thank you for saying so. Which possible struggles and hardships could you see coming to challenge Luffy's role as a leader and make him grow as a character? So a lot of that's actually happened already, just in sort of small doses. So we've had Luffy being criticized for his impulsivity by Vivi in Drum Island, and having to learn that going headfirst and headstrong and stubborn isn't always the way forward. And I think that's really important, and I think that I would prefer that that lesson be reinforced. Personally, I think it would be really cool if Luffy was reminded of that in several ways down the line, because human progression a lot of the time isn't super neat, you know? You can learn something about yourself and learn that you've made a mistake and want to correct that, but you can regress, or you can fall into bad habits in different situations, and maybe because, spoilers for the end of this arc, Vivi's not with Luffy anymore, maybe he'll not be able to grasp onto her advice or be able to apply it in certain ways down the line. So I think I'd actually be down for Luffy to be reminded once again that he is too stubborn and impulsive and needs to step back a bit and think of the bigger picture. I'd be down for that to be a consistent thing throughout a section of One Piece or all of One Piece or something. I'd be down for more of that. Like, if this is all that Luffy needed for it to be ingrained into his mind, then cool, that's fine. But I think it's also believable to take the Luffy still has a lot to learn in this regard direction. So I would definitely be up for that sort of direction for what Luffy learns from and how he learns and the specific lessons he learns. Aside from that, non-specifically, I just really like for Luffy's ideals and philosophies to be challenged. I want him to think about the way he's viewed the world and life and his journey and his friends and and himself and his motivations, I want him to, in any given way, look at those and really examine them and deliberate about, am I doing things right? Do I have to adjust in one way or another? Like I said, he's already adjusted in a couple ways, but I want that to continue, and I don't really have any predictions for how that can manifest, but just anything that challenges him. That would be great. And I think that sort of thing can only lead to Luffy being a more rich, three-dimensional character and the story being benefited as a result, and substantiating other characters potentially, in the way that the earlier stuff substantiated Vivi. Mushra says, the one thing Drum Island really made me love about Oda's choice in Luffy's powers is how his rubber powers have been shown to be able to change and adapt to new ideas Luffy gets from the others around him. So while he will always stay at his core himself, the thematic through line of how his powers reflect him and that he can become whatever he wants and needs to be. I really like that idea that as his powers grow, so will he as a person and a leader. Yes, I totally agree. I love the idea that Luffy at his core personality, his core traits and drive will never change. That is something that's undeniable, that drive, and he wouldn't be the same character, the same person, the story wouldn't be the same without that. I don't want that to change at all. But I love that the things surrounding him, and like it's put in this comment, the way his power manifests and is affected by those around him and his experiences. I love that the way he interacts with the world with regards to his powers, his ideals and attitude and psychology. I love that that's ever changing with regards to the people around him and what he learns, because again, it shows he's flexible, he's humble, he's willing to learn. And I think that is nearly as important of an aspect to Luffy's character than anything else. You know, it doesn't usurp his drive and need for dreams and freedom and conviction and pride, but it's definitely very powerful and an enduring aspect of his character, I think. Steep Reviews says, I think one of the most overlooked parts of this arc is the conversation between Marimo, Chess, and Dalton. I think it cements why Wapol is a villain I love in this series. It might be partly due to my America coming out that I don't find an idiotic tyrant who hoards healthcare to openly oppress people unrealistic or shallow, but the series explains why he's this shallow caricature of a human with just a simple conversation. There's a reason why when Chopper has his fight against his trauma, he beats off Chess and Marimo. Those two are the real ones that run the kingdom, taking advantage of an easily moldable brat who they likely got hooked on power, all while being able to deflect any of the blame to Wapol. When Dalton objects to how they're running the country, they tell him to defer to policy to uphold the system. They're the passive encouragers of corruption who excuse their own evil with self-pleasure, never having to take responsibility for it at all. And what better form for the shape of that nepotistic monopolizing power than a tyrant who feels entitled to eat everything? Wapol is an empty system that consumes all with no regard. He has no need for anything, yet that leaves him insatiable, his emptiness unfillable no matter how much he devours. He is an avatar of entitlement that could do nothing without enablers, and Chopper defeating Chess and Marimo is the end of the true power propping up this corruption. God, I love this arc. Oh, and a fun trivia thing, you might see Wapol has a big hippo theme throughout and keeps calling people hippos. This is a pun in Japanese since Baka is an idiot and Kaba is apparently a hippo, so he's so dumb he doesn't even call people idiots correctly, and while embodying that idiocy with his hippo-themed design, he's calling people what he is himself, an idiot. That is a cool little bit of trivia, and I just really thought it was important to bring attention to this comment. Don't have a ton to add, other than what I said in the Drum Island video, which was, yeah, I love the function of Wapol. I don't find him to be a terrific villain, I don't find him to be an interesting personality, I don't find him to be complex or super dynamic, but he is exactly what he needs to be, and I love the idea of him being this vacuum, this foundation for other motivations to feed off of as he consumes everything, right? I think this is an important perspective, and I really appreciate Steep Reviews bringing up this perspective because they dive into this deeper than I did, but I totally agree that Wapol is all that he needed to be. At the end of this series, I'm not going to look back on Wapol, unless he changes a lot, as a really super memorable character or one that I enjoyed a ton, but he is what he needed to be, and not every character has to appeal to my specific tastes. It's not like the arc doesn't achieve what it needs to do, because it absolutely does, and Wapol's a big part of that, through contrast, through thematic contrast, and through what he shows about these sort of sociopolitics. So yeah, Wapol is definitely very functional, definitely does the job he needs to do to a T, and I really wouldn't change him, even if he isn't one of my favorite characters. I think that looking through characters through this lens of authorial intent rather than is it my type of character or not, is really important. And there have been plenty of characters in the past through that mechanical functional mold of Wapples that are my favorite characters, so I definitely love that sort of concept of a character as well, and I think this is an important perspective. Luciano Francesco says, "For the longest time I couldn't grasp what made Luffy one of my favorite characters in manga, but now I think I understand. He lacks any sort of prejudice. I would go as far as to say that he doesn't actually know anything until he gets to experience it. While the world fears the unknown, Luffy is attracted to it. Drum Island gives us a clear example of this with the wonderful interactions he has with Chopper, but after rereading the story, I noticed something similar even in Arlong Park. While the other badasses of the crew responded to the racist comments of the fishmen with other racist comments, Luffy never did any of that. He never put his human nature above that of the fishmen. When Arlong asked, 'What do you think the difference is between us?' Luffy said, 'The nose, the hands.' He always points out the physical quirks of other people, something that is seen as being rude in our overly polited world. But those differences are a source of curiosity for Luffy, not fear or rejection. He's the embodiment of open-mindedness." I totally agree. I think that open-mindedness and ability to bypass preconceived notions and simply judge things as he experiences them and make his own judgments depending on what he takes in and sees, I think that totally integrates with his desire to be in control of everything. I think it totally integrates with the fact that he didn't want Robin to lead them, to lead their journey. He would rather have a more harsh journey as long as it was theirs than it be dictated by someone else. Luffy is totally open-minded but wants to experience these things for himself, as far as I can tell. That's why he didn't care about Nami's backstory. He had made a judgment of who she was and was going to stick to it because he was confident in it and didn't care about what other people had to say or how she may have been in the past. The fact is, this is who she is now. It's all totally cohesive and integrative, and Luffy is the definition of open-minded. He takes everything in, makes judgments depending on what's taken in, no bias, and without really adhering to social niceties or anything like that, reacts totally honestly. And I think that's very refreshing and very fitting for a journey like this, where he drives everyone forward, pushed on by his honest fervor. Last couple here. Yoki or Joki says, "I think your thoughts and reviews are excellent. You just have a great way of explaining what you think about the series. Thank you very much." Not really a question, more of a suggestion, but with your top characters ranking you do at the end, I think you should split it into 2 lists. One for the members of the crew and a top 10, or top 20, however big it gets, for everyone else. Allies, side characters, antagonists. Just because you're probably going to have the Straw Hats in your top 10 range no matter what, so it can add variety. Yeah, I've had a couple of other people say that to me as well. It isn't something I'm going to implement right now because, bit of a spoiler for later on, but that is totally shaken up here. So I'm happy with the diversity so far, but if it gets to a point where I feel like that's necessary, then it's not something I'm opposed to. So yeah, I'll keep an eye on it, but as of right now, it isn't something I am going to implement because I don't think it's necessary. If it becomes so, for sure. And last one from Zephyrus. I love the point you brought up at 36 minutes regarding Luffy being flexible as a character and how it can be likened to Luffy's literal flexibility as a rubber man. It's something I've thought about as well lately. One of my favorite aspects of One Piece is how flexible it can be with its tone. It can be as whimsical as it wants and as serious as it wants, without either feeling out of place. And what I love is that this sort of flexibility can extend to the characters as well, be it in personality or design. Just look at Baratie, for example. You had a character like Pearl and a character like Mihawk introduced in the same arc, and neither felt out of place within the established world. I remember a point you brought up in your Little Garden review as well about how cool it was that Oda basically has near-endless creative freedom with the types of locations he can design for the Grand Line. And he's able to do this thanks to the previously established boundaries that he set up in the story. Freedom is a big theme in One Piece, and I think it's awesome that the series as a whole is able to encapsulate that in almost every aspect of its presentation. So yeah, I've talked about flexibility in a lot of contexts. I think I maybe touched on the tone a little bit, but I just wanted to bring attention to this comment because it's very true. Oda sets from the start, literally chapter 1, that chapter is full of heartbreak, and it's also full of silliness and charm, and it doesn't take itself too seriously. And I think that foundation was the tonal identity of the series in a nutshell, because there is no real limit to how serious this can get or how lighthearted this can get. Now, is it faultless all the time? No. I think that there are some times where it gets a bit too humorous and a bit whiplashy for my tastes, but it's never been anything super serious in terms of a flaw. It's not something I would consider a flaw, actually, not at this point yet. And overall, I think it is definitely a huge net positive, because with this foundation, anything within this set range, and that range, like I said, is nearly infinite, feels in character for the series. And within one arc, there can be something from total silliness, for example, some of Mr. Toubon Clay's antics in Alabasta, to something deeply, deeply serious, like Pel's sacrifice, or, well, we'll get to that, or any of the really sad or dramatic aspects of Alabasta, just in this arc. So yeah, I love that that's been established here, and I think that while it isn't flawless, I think that it's really done in a way that allows Oda to have as much creative freedom as he wants, not just in the settings, as I mentioned before, but in terms of the tone and the direction that the story can go in. And that integrates really well with freedom, as Zephyrus says. So I totally agree. That's all for this video. Thank you guys so much for sending in your AJP's comments. Just a reminder, I read all of them, even the ones that aren't chosen, as long as they don't have spoilers, of course. And if you'd like to be put in a pool to be selected, just be sure to use the hashtag AJPs in one of your comments. But yeah, that said, let's get into the arc itself. Back again, different shirt, different day, sorry about that again. But before getting into the arc specifically, I do just want to let you guys know, some have been asking about the things that I've been spoiled on with One Piece. It's very small, but I do know a couple of things. So just really quickly to name them off, if you're reading along with me, I don't know how many people do that, but if you are, if you aren't caught up, maybe just mute the video for the next 30 seconds or something. The things I know that I've been spoiled about, very minor, but they're structural and just things that have come to me. Firstly, I know that there is a time skip somewhere. I unfortunately had that spoiled for me. I don't know when it happens. I have no idea. It could be in 10 chapters, it could be in 500, I don't know. But I do know a time skip happens sometime. I also know that sometime in the future, the approach of the arcs starts to change in that the crew gets divided up more. There are full arcs where the crew is divided and not everyone's together, and it gets branched off more. But that's all, in the grand scheme of things, very minor, and I really can't complain. For anyone curious about what I've been spoiled on, that's it. That's all. Pretty damn good if I do say so myself. But yeah, now properly into the arc. In terms of themes, I think there's a lot of interesting stuff here that's both indicative of its identity in and of itself, and also a continuation of things prior. So there is this beautiful continuation of the political aspect of Drum Island, the leadership aspect, the ruler aspect. In Drum Island, there was that dichotomy between sort of cynicism and power when it came to leaders and those who have heart, and the difference between those and the nuances and where true value lies in a leader, heartfelt versus no heart at all. That I think gets continued here, but it has a bit of a new complexion. It takes it further. It talks about idealism, the value of idealism versus sort of, again, cynicism, hope, trust, camaraderie, connections, and why those can prop you up and give you so much more value than someone who has none of that and who just heartlessly rules, like Sir Crocodile. We have people banding together to defeat Sir Crocodile. We have people who believe in something, who trust, who are able to trust and able to put themselves out there for other people, and willing to be hurt, willing to feel pain for gain, which Sir Crocodile totally is not willing to do for whatever reason. It's this trust, camaraderie, connection versus the complete lack of that antithesis, and how people respond to that, how populaces respond to leaders like that, or people in general respond to that. You know, I think back to what Luffy said to Vivi, lean on us. You don't have to do this by yourself. We will be there for you, and you can't be this sort of leader by burdening yourself. You should be able to, you know, confide in others and lean on others. And the importance of that is essentially the core of what I get thematically from this arc. Bonds between people is essential in all walks of life. In this situation, especially overcoming these seemingly insurmountable odds, leading in the way that Vivi does and Cobra does, and moving past tragedy or moving past difficulties and hurdles in one way or another. And these bonds are essential. They are absolutely essential, and they can be unbreakable across any distance, across time, across whatever. Experiences that you have with other people, they'll never disappear, and they empower us in the moment, outside of the moment, through what we've learned to overcome things and be victorious in whatever walk of life we're talking about. That's the crux, and that's the difference between Sir Crocodile and our party. And I think it's beautifully presented throughout here. There's so much, like we've talked about in the previous video, but if I had to narrow it down to one or two things, connection, trust, and the opposite of that. The cover story for Alabasta essentially comprises of Hachi from the Fishman, Arlong's Fishman Pirates. He's on this huge RPG quest. He's going around helping people, saving people, helping animals, helping damsels in distress. He's looking towards cooking stuff. He's just doing all sorts of things. It's pretty fun. I don't have a ton to say about it, but it's nice to be able to see him in this context. And it's all that stuff that the cover stories do well. But then we pick off in the story where I left off at the end of the last arc. Luffy has been defeated by Croc, and he's in the process of trying to bounce back. The countdown to this unbelievable climax is underway. It's getting closer and closer. Everyone's coalescing and moving towards Alubarna, and the Royals and the Rebels and our crew and the Navy and everything. It's all going down. But we cut to Luffy, who thinks about what Sir Crocodile said about how Yuba will die, and kind of ponders about how he was outclassed by him. And you wonder here, does he feel inferiority? Does he feel like his high standards have not been met for himself? It's an interesting little moment. But then a bunch of hands come out of the sand, and in this almost biblical-looking rebirth, very interestingly symbolic, Robin takes him out of the quicksand with her power. She then asks him how he fights as someone whose name is D, Will of D. She questions those with the Will of D internally, and it just builds this mystery of what the Will of D is, who it encapsulates. We know it's Ace and Goldie, Roger, and Luffy. Who else it could encapsulate? Is it exclusive to those three? Probably not, and it just builds more and more mystery and intrigue for that plot element, which I'm a huge fan of. Robin knows much more than she lets on. There is so much beneath the surface with her. But then Pell comes and saves Luffy and takes him towards the conflict, and Robin just leaves them be. Again, much more beneath the surface, willing to help Luffy save his life and then allow him to go back into the fray, which would run in counter to what her partner is doing, right? Then we learn that Igaram actually survived, and he's in Nanohana, and he kind of talks to himself and says, not to worry, the rain will return when the sandstorm ends. He's got this element of hope to him. As always, the natural order will reset itself, and he has this hope that it will. Now, at the moment I was going, how the hell did he survive? But what's notable, I don't know if I missed something. I don't think I did. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think there's any overt answer yet about how he survived. But what is interesting is that Robin is the one that blew up the ship that he was on. Robin, who is now actively helping Luffy in multiple ways, going against Sir Crocodile. So I think there's definitely something there with what Robin was doing. Unless I'm forgetting a detail, I could be. If I am, like I said, correct me. But I think it's indicative that Robin was essential to that quote-unquote death that now is revealed to have been a fake-out. As the sandstorm continues to gather pace, it goes towards Yuba, and Toto, as always resolute, screams at it, saying, it will never beat Yuba. His hope will never go out. I talked about how connection and trust and how that empowers you and the bonds is essential thematically to this arc. A big one that I mentioned and touched on but didn't delve into a huge amount earlier is the idea of idealism and hope. So apologies for that, because that's another huge theme here. Hope. Hoping against hope that one day the sun will shine again, or in this case, the rain will fall again. Toto is as big a representation of that theme as anything else. I think if you had to put that on two characters, Vivi and Toto are the two foremost examples of that. He never stopped believing in his king, he never stopped believing in his kingdom, that the rain would fall, that things would be okay in the end. And even in the face of this fierce sandstorm and darkness, he never wavers. And I think it's super admirable, and I like Toto a lot. And he is so encapsulating of everything this arc is about, because hope is a big part of this idealism. Sometimes it can be naive, as was dwelt upon earlier with Vivi's mindset, and you have to take into account realism. but there is immense value in it. There's then some silliness. The crew are riding on these crabs, like I said in the last video. They can't cross a river. They need to pick up speed, so Chopper says it loves dancing girls. This crab is quite horny, it likes dancing girls, so Nami dances and then it picks up speed to get to Alabasta faster. It crosses the river, it's a miracle, okay, sure. Then it sinks, so they enlist the help of the Jugons that Luffy helped earlier to help them, because the Jugons like Luffy, they want to help his friends, they want to assist them, so I like that. It's a nice little bit of a karmic turnaround in response to Luffy's act of kindness towards them in the first place, and it's a reward for the way that Luffy has this constant respect for all forms of life and never judges anything and is very open to helping people, and helping animals in this case. Similar to the Lapin situation, kind of, from Drum Island. Kadu then comes with the supersonic duck squadron to help transport everyone after the Jugons help them, and then they move on to Alabasta. Little do they know, Baroque Works waits in ambush with the goal of capturing Vivi and then eliminating her, because they have been ordered by Sir Crocodile, you cannot let Vivi do her thing, because there's a very real possibility that doing this could lead to the rebellion completely just losing all motivation to start this conflict, and things could dissipate, and he doesn't want that, so Vivi needs to go. So Baroque Works is there to ambush her. As this happens, Koza and the rebels get closer to Alabasta. The royals get ready to defend. The Baroque Works agents talk about how they should just wait and let the struggle ensue and just watch from the sidelines, but as this happens, they see the supersonic duck squadron coming over the horizon, and they see what is our crew, who are all wearing capes so that Vivi cannot be identified, which is very smart. And then the crew make their way into town. They split up all over the place. Baroque Works agents pursue them all over the place, and they just grab their attention and form this amazing distraction. And once they're deep inside the town, they take off their hoods and kind of mock them. The 5 Straw Hats here, plus the camel eyelashes, are all here kind of mocking them in a really great spread, where all of them are just kind of lording over the Baroque Works people who they've fooled. Because what actually happened is that Vivi stayed behind when everyone else went into town. She stayed back, they were the decoy, she stayed on Kadu, and then once the Baroque Works agents dispersed, she made her way inside. And there's this lovely little panel where she kind of has this moment of gratitude. She almost has a bit of a praying gesture, in gratitude for the crew and what they've done for her and what they continue to do for her. And I think that was really lovely. I love that little tiny moment, because Oda never really shies away from the fact that she is eternally grateful for everything. And partly for them, obviously she's doing this for her kingdom, but she makes her way inside Alabasta and she resolves to stop the rebels, not just because she needs to save her kingdom, but to do honor to her crewmates' sacrifice here and all that they're doing to help her. And I love that she's taken on that responsibility, and it empowers her. It doesn't burden her. It's a very thin line, but that distinction is everything, and that's what Luffy said to her. Don't be scared to lean on people and allow their bonds with you to empower you. Don't be scared of that. That's what life is about, and she's able to use her connections with them in the way that they sacrifice themselves for her to then empower herself as they would have wanted, and I think it's really beautiful. So as the royals continue to prep their defense, Vivi and Kadu make their way in. She thinks about how she really hopes Koza will listen, and then in the midst of everything, she says stop. As on the horizon, the rebels are going towards the town, and as the royals are getting ready to fight the rebels, she's in the middle of them and she just says stop. She says it's a setup. The rebels see her, they get confused, and there's a bit of a standstill, but then some idiot from the royal army accidentally sets off a shot and fires a cannon by accident. Very reminiscent of the Helm's Deep battle from Lord of the Rings. They reminded me of that immediately. And then because of this guy, the fight ensues regardless, and what Vivi does is for naught, at least in this moment. And so the rebels continue their charge. Vivi continues screaming. She really wants to get them to stop, obviously, but there's too much confusion, and Koza passes by her, and he ends up brushing off what he heard, not really understanding exactly what had happened, as he goes by in the foreground and she in the background, or vice versa, one of the two, in a really great panel, kind of illustrating through this smoke that he's traveling past, this distance between them, this communication gap. I think it's very symbolic of that sort of thing. He heard something familiar, but he doesn't stop. That gap between them, that communication gap, which is also indicative of, I think, his misunderstandings, is not surmountable here. It's a great illustration of him passing by her in the smoke, and it's very sad in that moment. And past Vivi, I think, would have been discouraged, and who knows if she would have persevered after this, because it's a terrifying, devastating blow. The battle has started. The battle that she said, I have to stop it before it starts, it has started. But Vivi resolves here to stop it even if it started. There's an immense determination and perseverance and strength of character here, this mental strength, that I don't think would have been there if she hadn't traveled with the crew for as long as she did. She could have easily faltered and been discouraged, but I think her experiences with her friends trained her for a situation like this. I think it made her stronger, because their hearts, their lives ride on her, and what they've taught her throughout helps her to be able to rise up to the challenge once more. It's this duty she feels for her people, for those connections and bonds she's made, and that hope that she has in her heart. It all integrates to make her so continuously persevering for this goal. She has to save her kingdom. And she says here, literally basically what I'm saying, just encapsulated, I learned something aboard that ship, to never give up. It's so beautiful. I love Vivi. I can't stress how much her journey and her growth and development has struck me. It's been amazing, and it continues to be throughout the arc. Back with the crew, ultimately Baroque Works makes short work of Usopp and the camel, and Sanji sees that this means that Vivi is in danger, because they probably doubled back and are pursuing her. So Mr. Two-Bon Clay gets away and masks himself as Usopp, who then tells Vivi, in a bad imitation of Usopp, to leave Karu behind, because he's useless and whatever. He's not going to be of any use to her. So he says, come with me. But Vivi thinks back to what Usopp's really like. Usopp loves Karu. They've had lots of little moments together where they bonded and had great reactions in unison. Usopp and Karu are close. So that in itself is a big red flag that this is not genuine. This is something to be wary of, especially given that it's been established that there is someone who can shapeshift into people that you might potentially know. But what seals it is that Zoro, as part of his plan, the key wasn't the actual bands they wore, which was externally visible to anyone who would try to fool others in the crew because of that, but what was underneath it. There was a mark. An X marks the spot on each of their arms, which Mr. Two-Bon Clay wasn't aware of. So very five-head of Zoro to do that in the first place, and I love how it continuously emphasizes how smart he is. A couple people in chat, Flying Hairball and Happy Sade, both called it two-factor authentication, which I thought was hilarious. But after this, Vivi is making her way into the depths, deeper into Alubarna with Karu, and Karu is just the MVP here. He is running himself into the ground, foaming at the mouth. He's hurt, he's injured, but nonetheless is doing everything he can to get Vivi where she needs to go, to defend her from Mr. 2 and take her to stop the war. In the midst of this, there's a very meaningful panel of, as they're going through the fray, of blood. Some blood splashes in front of Vivi and some of it goes on her face, and I think that is very symbolic of this coming of age into realism that she's experiencing. This is it. This is the world. This is war. This is something she needs to get used to, that Luffy alluded to. People die. This is what's going to happen when you're a ruler of a place like this. It's not happy. It's not idealistic. It's brutal. But this is life, and this is something you must navigate within and use your idealism while taking into account that these things happen, not while ignoring them. And so I think that panel was really indicative of that. Vivi with the blood that kind of splashes on her face. But how does she act in response to it? She continues on. And that's proof more than anything that she's learned what she has to do. She continues to persevere through her pain. Then we get some setup for fights that are about to ensue in the next bunch of chapters at this point in the story. Sanji defends Vivi from Mr. 2 and squares off against Mr. Two-Bon Clay, and Usopp is with Chopper, and he's being very selfless and caring for Chopper more than he is for himself, which is, I think, quite lovely, and love that in the immediate aftermath of Chopper joining the crew, we have this bond between the crew members, which is just really nice. The crew members and Chopper, Usopp specifically here. But the face-off here that ends up happening is Usopp and Chopper against Mr. 4 and Miss Merry Christmas. And it starts off very kind of over-the-top, cartoonish, comical in style. It's very wild. There is a dog gun, a cannon that ate a dog fruit. It's wild. It's all over the place, and it's just Oda being super creative, and it's very eccentric and very entertaining. But the tone here is notably quite light. It starts off quite light. Miss Merry Christmas here has consumed a mole fruit, which allows her to go back and forth between mole form and human form, to which Usopp remembers that he mentioned, kind of looks on in shock as he remembers that he said to Kaya that he talked to her about a story with this big mole, and he's realizing that this is kind of coming to pass. And again, nothing conclusive here, but it's interesting that all these things that were said to be beautiful, tall tales that were unrealistic, unbelievable, that wouldn't happen in this world, a lot of them end up coming to pass. I think that says a lot about the idea of these improbable dreams that a lot of the crew hold. You know, these unrealistic things that may seem fantastical to others could very well come to pass, and that is a lot of the mantra of One Piece, that hope for these dreams. The fact that these unbelievable things that Usopp would talk about as if they were lies to other people, or we assumed were lies, end up coming to pass. We had it with Little Garden as well. I think that's really symbolic, thematically. And it also makes me wonder, this is still in the back of my mind, is it a coincidence? Is it just a coincidence that all these things are actually coming to pass? Or is it intentional that the exact specific things that Usopp mentions end up coming to pass? Like, is there more to it than that? I don't know. But Usopp throughout this fight grows more and more in prominence. Him and Chopper, he has this really iconic line to me where he calls himself the Destroyer King, and he says, "I am Captain Usopp." It's a fun fight. It shows his deceptiveness and cleverness as he uses this Usopp pound that's supposed to be 5 tons of power that actually ends up being fake, and it ends up being paper mache. But nonetheless, he's resourceful here. He's courageous. And he's very Usopp. And sorry I'm not talking too much about Chopper, but this to me was one of those big Usopp moments, and you guys know how I feel about Usopp. So most of what I took away was from him, but Chopper definitely played a role as well. It's a fun duo, him and Chopper, Usopp and Chopper. I love how they work together and kind of banter and talk and stumble their way through this fight in a very human and flawed, but nonetheless genuine and courageous way. There's a great spread where they're running away from an explosion. Within those moments, Usopp is panicking. Chopper looks very badass. It's great stuff. But as I said, the fight started off very off-the-wall, bizarre, out there, silly, lighthearted, but it slowly transitions into a much more weighty, dramatic fight, because the Baroque Works agents here then reveal to them the prospect of Luffy dying to Sir Crocodile. And in this moment, this fight turns from something that's, like I said, off the wall, into something that's so indicative of everything that One Piece is. So representative of the heart of One Piece, and of Usopp, and the crew. Chopper is shocked to hear the idea of Luffy dying. He can't really believe it, and it makes you wonder if he's thinking about what Hiruluk said. When does a man die? Only when he's forgotten. But nonetheless, the prospect of that physical death is horrifying. So it's disturbing to see Chopper so shocked like that. But Usopp here, like I said, is the star to me. He says, no way. There's no way that Luffy's died. It continuously gets hammered in. He stands there, he shakes his fists in rage as Miss Merry Christmas laughs at the prospect of these dreams dying. Luffy's dream for the One Piece becoming the king of pirates, and Miss Merry Christmas scoffs at this, scoffs at his friend's dream of becoming king. That's the greatest insult here, and that's what sets Usopp off, because Luffy's dreams are of utmost importance. They're his friend's dreams. They're what has helped sweep everyone up together and help them find this family. And then Usopp says, in response to it, I just need to read the lines. Listen, Chopper, there comes a time when a man, even if he's up against an enemy he's scared of, and as he's saying this, he's being beaten around completely, bloodied and broken. Through a bloodied, maybe broken nose, he says, even if there's no chance of winning, there comes a time when a man's gotta fight, and that's when someone makes fun of their friend's dream. That's the one thing I won't let you laugh at. Skull fractured, nose broken. He's bruised and bloodied and completely beat up, dead on his feet. He's still standing there to defend his brother. He's learned to protect. He's learned the courage that you need to become this brave warrior of the sea. And in this moment, I think he becomes the end point, encapsulated, of what he wants to be consistently. I can think of no better example of a brave warrior of the sea than Usopp here, defending the honor of his friend's dream. The dream that swept him up and taught him to dream. Or at least to carry out his dream. Luffy taught Usopp a great deal about believing in yourself, about protecting your dream, about searching out whatever will result in your freedom, following your heart, everything there. Luffy taught Luffy taught Usopp all of that, and Usopp took it in, and he learned, and he ingrained it in himself to become this person that's able to be this courageous and fight back in this way. And he then imparts these lessons onto Chopper, making a point to him about hopes, dreams, camaraderie, defending these dreams that your comrades and friends and family hold so close to their heart. This is what it means to have this found family. This is what it means to be a member of this crew. At the end of the day, even when you're scared, as he says, even when you're scared to death of your enemy, even when you think there's no chance of you winning, you have to fight. In the past, he would look at his crewmates who would fight these lost causes to defend their dreams and the dreams of those around them. Luffy in particular, the foremost example, and now he is that example to someone else. I'm simplifying a little bit, but it very much rings true. He used to be what Chopper was in these situations in the past. Now he has grown and come into this role, this representation, and I think it so clearly shows his growth in such a beautiful, profound way. It's a huge Usopp moment, maybe my favorite so far, and it's a huge turning point for him, where he properly embodies this brave warrior spirit that he's been trying to become this whole time. And I know that this doesn't mean that he's gonna be this every time, all the time, consistently from now on. He's not gonna be this brave. He's gonna be scared again. He's gonna be cowardly again. He's human. He's gonna regress. He's going to have flaws, because that more than anything is Usopp, as we know. But reaching this point is definitely a watershed moment. It's huge, because he's proved to those around him, to his enemy, most importantly to himself, that he can do it, and he can reach that moment again. And the more you do it, and the more comfortable you become, and more confident you become that you're able to do these things that seemingly seemed impossible before, the easier it becomes. And so this is so big for Usopp. But then using that courage, it fuels them both, and they win this battle at the Southeast Gate, I think it was? Yeah, Southeast Gate. Then we transport back into the conflict. Koza's fighting, he's hurt, he's been wounded by a bullet, but in a show of heart, Koza, heartfelt to the end, he wants to offer Cobra the chance to surrender. He wants to give him one more chance to stop this and show that he has this heart that his dad believes in. Vivi then goes to Shaka because she needs him to do something, which is made a mystery at this point, and then Sanji starts fighting Mr. 2 Bon Clay. It's really funny. Mr. 2 says he'll distract Sanji by cloning himself into the world's most weird, bizarre-looking person, and it ends up being essentially just him with Usopp's nose and maybe one or two other features, but he hardly changes at all, which is hilarious. There's a really funny expression where he's crying to himself. I thought it was a great bit of respite in comedy. Mr. 2 then forms into Sanji's friends, Usopp, and Sanji has no problems fighting Usopp, to which Mr. 2 Bon Clay says, "It's a shock that you're able to be this heartless," and then Sanji said, "It's what's inside that counts." But then Mr. 2 Bon Clay shifts into Nami, and that's where things run into a bit of a hitch. And then, at the same time, we learn that Vivi's plan is to destroy the palace. Destroy the palace to save the people on both sides. And those around who hear Vivi's proclamation and idea that they should bring down the palace say, no, we can't do this. This will go against everything that the king stands for, that Alabasta stands for. This building is so representative of everything that this place is, and it would be a disgrace to bring it down. It goes against tradition, it goes against the spirit of Alabasta. But Shaka, knowing his king, thinks back to what his king said. Alabasta is its people, and this is in service of the people. So he agrees. It's symbolic of this new order, of Vivi's new order, this new philosophy. You know, I'm not disregarding the importance of relics and historical buildings and monuments to times in the past that were influential for this city, you know? There is deep, deep importance in history and how that's represented through monuments like this, historical buildings. This palace is deeply important. I'm not disregarding that. But with your back against the wall, if bringing down a palace like this will be beneficial towards saving the people, do it. You know, walls can be rebuilt, but lives cannot be brought back. And so is it a shame that they have to bring down this palace? Because this palace is this monument to Alabasta's rich history? Of course. But it's not the be-all and end-all. Doing this isn't a disgrace. It isn't flying in the face of all that Alabasta is and all that King Cobra stands for. Not doing it while knowing it could save people would actually be going against what he stands for. And Shaka understands this, and so he agrees with Vivi. And like I said, it's symbolic of this new world order. Tear down the walls, build up new ones. This representation of the old order is gone now with this prospect of the palace being brought down, and from the ashes will rise this new era. Traditions are important, but they come and go, and they're influenced and shaped by culture, and walls can be rebuilt, like I said. But people in the present, lives cannot be replaced. People remain. You rule for them, and they support you. It's a give and take, as Luffy taught Vivi, and she understands that just as her father does. We then cut back to the Mr. Tubonclay versus Sanji fight. It's very fun. Sanji's unable to fight against Nami, but then he's able to realize that Mr. Tubonclay has to change back to his form for a split second to attack him, so he takes advantage of that to attack him, because he cannot harm Nami physically. He cannot harm something that looks like Nami, despite him saying, it's what's on the inside that counts. It's pretty fun stuff. The two fight till exhaustion, and Mr. Tubonclay eventually just says, I'm done. I don't want to transform into Nami anymore to immobilize him, and he just says, kill me, because the organization will eliminate him for failing anyway, which is interesting and very cutthroat of Sir Crocodile, and not at all out of left field. But Sanji picks him up by hand, and he says, there's nothing else to say except good fight. There's no need to kill you. And I love that mutual respect there. I think it really plays into the idea of what Mr. Tubonclay said earlier, that friendships and bonds, which is again one of the key moments, or the key themes of this arc, are not dependent on the amount of time you spend with one another, and I think a bond is formed here. Then we go back to Vivi and Shaka, and Vivi says something that's very true, which is that she doesn't blame Shaka at all for defending the palace against the rebels. It sucks that he had to go against his people and go against what King Cobra wanted, but it was out of necessity, like I described in my last video. His hands were absolutely tied, and she empathizes with him. She says it must have been tough to deal without Igadam for 2 years, to be burdened with this, and she worries about her friends at the same time, to which Shaka comforts her by saying, we'll throw this huge party for them at the end. And it's encouraging. It shows that he believes that they'll survive, and it's what Vivi needs to hear. I like Shaka. But then here, Sir Crocodile appears, saying that this palace is his, and that he doesn't want them tearing it down. He wants it so that he can look down on the vermin. Again, that immense pride. That superiority complex. So he's here to prevent them from tearing down the palace, which is indirectly preventing them from saving the people and dissipating the war. Now at the same time, we go to Zoro and Nami's fight, who are with Ms. Doublefinger and Mr. One. Zoro is by himself and he's lost Nami and he's concerned about her, as we see that Doublefinger and Mr. One have targeted her because they want to target the weaker one first. And Nami is exhausted. She just keeps running. She doesn't really have hopes that she can fight them head on and be victorious, which is understandable given where she's come from. She eventually concludes that she can't keep running forever and she'll have to fight them, and so she turns around and looks at them and then goes, nope, and then just keeps running, which I think is a very funny moment and a characteristic that her and Usopp share. They are at times akin to running away, but I love that because it balances out the immense perseverance and courage of the crew with very human traits, and I like that her and Usopp have that commonality between them. And it was funny, it was hilarious, I like that a lot for her. But Zoro then saves her and crashes into Mr. One, who reveals that he's invulnerable to swords because he ate a dice fruit, and he's essentially a human sword, and thus his skin, he's invulnerable. This triggers a bit of a flashback to Zoro's past, where we hear about how he rejected Baroque works. He defeated Mr. Seven, who said that he didn't agree to his conditions, the conditions of which Zoro said, I want to be the boss if I join Baroque Works. He didn't agree with that, and so Zoro defeated Mr. Seven. He only saw worth in joining Baroque Works if he could be the boss, which is interesting because of the contrast here, because he joins Luffy's crew and is totally happy with not being the boss there. In fact, he is very self-aware that Luffy is the captain, he's the leader. Zoro will never be anything higher than number 2. At the very most, and he is happy and fulfilled by that, which I think just shows the fact that Zoro would never have been happy with anything other than number 1 at Baroque Works, in contrast to being totally satisfied and fulfilled being on the crew with Luffy, at most being number 2. I think it shows how much he didn't respect Baroque Works, but also just how fulfilling it is for him to work with Luffy, under Luffy, on his crew. With this kindred spirit of his, and how much it fulfills him. Also, it was pointed out by people in chat that Luffy just suits his style more. Luffy's simple, Sir Crocodile manipulates and works in the shadows. We know what Zoro's more like. and what he responds to better. And so we know about Zoro, his goal throughout life is to become the strongest swordsman. He only saw the path towards that as number 1 on Baroque Works, but as number 2 on Luffy's crew, or I keep saying number 2 Max on Luffy's crew, he sees a path towards that. He feels this freedom. And so here, Mr. Seven didn't acquiesce to his demands, and so Zoro killed him. And Zoro just says he's not interested anymore. He's not interested in the job for number 1 at Baroque Works. It's awful. It's nothing compared to the fulfillment he gets now. And he calls Mr. One a hollow tin soldier. Hollow in comparison to how fulfilled he is to be with this crew. Ultimately, though, in the midst of this battle, Mr. One tells Doublefinger to go after Nami. Then we get a nice flashback for Nami, who we learn has been feeling inadequate in some ways. She has been feeling that she is letting the crew down by not being able to be useful in combat. So she asks Usopp to build her a weapon so that she can be useful in that way. And so the fact that she feels like she's kind of letting them down in a way and wants to compensate is wild to me. Because I've said this before, Nami is essential to the crew. They would be completely lost without her. They wouldn't be able to navigate anywhere. They wouldn't know just common sense things that she knows that are so vital for their journey. She is everything to the crew, and they value her so much, as we saw on Drum Island, through her absence. And so it's a bit sad to me that she doesn't see her own value in that way, because even without becoming stronger and being able to be useful in combat, she is absolutely irreplaceable. But she feels like a bit of a burden here, and I think it's a bit sad. But very, very good writing for her character, because it shows how much she values this home she's found. The crew and their support pour themselves into her, provide her with this love and this family and this place to belong and this happiness and this ability to smile, which she never was able to have before. And so in response, she feels it necessary to take on so much to, I guess, kind of repay that. And like I said, she does so much, but she still wants to do more. And it's unreal to me, this determination and this commitment to being the best she can be. And there's a fun little exchange here as Usopp says, yeah, I'll make you a weapon. And Nami kind of bypasses the amount of money it'll cost to make these weapons, as Usopp's kind of worrying about that. It was pretty cute. Nami also says she wants to fight for Vivi too, which is again an indicator that they all band around Luffy, but they are all in this for Vivi. She is their family, and they will fight to defend her dream, just like Usopp did for Luffy. That's what this crew does. This is what they're characterized by. This willingness to fight for one another and defend one another's dreams. And it's beautiful. So Nami wants to fight. And so we come back to the present. We see that Doublefinger has had the spike fruit, which allows her to manipulate her body into spikes, which is very reminiscent of Lust from Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood, or just Full Metal Alchemist in general. And then Nami brings out Usopp's weapon, called the Climate Baton, I believe it's called, used to cause changes in the weather to concentrate it on the enemy and make things, the momentum shift in the user's favor. She goes, okay, I'm going to use this, and then pigeons fly out. She then uses a rifle that Usopp made for her, and flowers come out of the rifle. So her weapon is full of duds. Noticeably, a nice little detail in this chapter that I just want to draw attention to in the SBS corner is that Oda points out, in response to one of the questions, that some of the members of the Sansan band are very clearly shown to be the rebels now, aside from Koza, obviously. Just a nice little bit of continuity there. But yeah, Nami continues to struggle with these dud weapons that Usopp has provided her with, and is extremely courageous in doing so, I have to say, which is really admirable, but it's just a really funny sequence. She's barely hanging on against Doublefinger, and then she realizes there's instructions, and she reads them, and she realizes that the utility of these weapons was to be party tricks. But then she reads the real instructions for the weapons eventually, and she's able to take a stand. She says she's been a thief for 8 years, and survived close scrapes due to her wits, and she'll do so again. Despite the real instructions, she continues to fumble around with the party tricks, but eventually is able to, through her genius and her smarts and, like she says, her flexibility and her wits, is able to improvise and use these party tricks to turn them into genuine weapons for her. To use her smarts, her knowledge of science. And there was no intention from Usopp to do it this way, which is fun indirect characterization for him. But this is just beautiful for Nami. She uses the climate batons to make a mirage, a near-perfect mirage, and starts gaining momentum in this fight against Doublefinger. And in this way, this is the perfect weapon for her. It doesn't need a great deal of strength, you don't need to be totally fearless, and you don't need to go all out and put yourself out there like Zoro or Luffy, but this is very Nami, using her smarts, her wits, her adaptability, her flexibility, just how cerebral she is as a person, to combat people. And I love that there's variability and flexibility in the way that these fights occur. Outside Alubarna, Sanji, Chopper, Usopp, and Eyelashes meet, and they decide to go out to help Vivi. And at the palace, there are a bunch of royals getting ready, royal knights getting ready to help King Cobra, but in this very almost kind of brutal, grotesque sequence, Robin uses all her hands to attack the guards and prevent them from helping King Cobra. It was really kind of brutal. And there's just pandemonium everywhere. And this gives Crocodile time to send Vivi into despair, hopefully from his perspective, by telling her that Luffy's dead. And Vivi thinks about him promising to meet her at Alubarna and says, no, I refuse to believe this. But then King Cobra reveals his true motive here, the core of why he's doing all this, and that is to obtain this thing called the Pluton. And in the midst of this, Nami continues to use not brawn but intelligence to continue to gain the upper hand in her fight with Miss Doublefinger, which, like I said, I love. And I don't know if I mentioned it before, but Nami's foot had been injured. And so, in the middle of the fight, Doublefinger uses an attack called the Sea Urchin Sting, which is a spike, again, which Nami blocks with her foot. It literally pokes through her foot, stabs her foot, and there's obviously immense pain, but what she says is that her pain is nothing compared to Vivi's, and that's why they're protecting her dream here. Nami then uses her Tornado Tempo, which is supposed to be a last resort. It gets all caught up in Miss Doublefinger, these doves get caught up, and Nami gets a bit lucky in knocking her out, but nonetheless, I applaud her for her resourcefulness and her adaptability and flexibility and smarts. I love it. And Nami, against all odds, ends up the victor against Miss Doublefinger. She fights in her own way, different than any other Straw Hat, to defend her friend's dreams in a way characteristic of all of them, that kinship, that same heart, but in a totally distinct way. And I love this. I love what this fight added for Nami. But back to Sir Crocodile, he talks about Pluton, which is essentially a power or a substance that can neutralize a whole island. It's said to be on Alabasta, and Cobra's reaction tells him that that's probably correct. Vivi and Shaka are shocked. They weren't aware of this, and so the utility of this is not to actually carry it out and use the Pluton, but to use it as a threat, as leverage, because Sir Crocodile wants to build his empire, build his army, and eventually overpower the world government. He wants to usurp them, and he needs the threat of the Pluton to allow himself to ascend in that way, because without it, that's not possible. But he then says he has a cannon aimed at the square where all the fighting is happening. In 30 minutes it will set off and kill everyone in the square. It's gonna kill them all, and Vivi asks how he can kill innocents. Because we know this is totally disgraceful to her given her philosophy, and he says that they're inconsequential. Just night and day, Vivi and Sir Crocodile, total thematic antithesis. And it's very ironic that Crocodile has all this support from the people from the start, but values it not at all. He doesn't value it. He looks at them totally different than Cobra or Vivi, but they have utility. They are his tools, and they will contribute to his overall plans. But once their use runs out, they are inconsequential. They're tools, and just that contrast is very telling between him and our protagonists here. And it really shows that Sir Crocodile is not a leader. He's, in spirit, another Wapol. He's a leader of men, but he doesn't represent the true heart of what a leader, a ruler, should be. And so Crocodile then asks Cobra about this thing called the Poneglyph, which will apparently, it's this apparently historical relic that will point to the location of the Pluton. Cobra says he'll take them to it. Shaka, in response, cannot stand to watch any longer and draws his sword. And then we cut away back to Zoro versus Mr. One. Zoro's having difficulty cutting him. He says cutting this human sword skin is like cutting steel. But then in response to this, Zoro pities Mr. One, saying that he's been waiting for a chance to show off after being driven into a corner. He relishes the challenge. He can't cut through steel yet, but once he beats Mr. One, he'll be able to say that he can. 1 + 1 = 2. Just like training. And we see here that Mr. One is a stepping stone to him. And it's incredibly raw, incredibly Zoro. Mr. One says that plenty have tried to beat him, but no one has, and Zoro then says, You've never met someone like me. He's right. He's absolutely right. So what I like about this is that Zoro's had this underlying arc of anxiety and feeling like the clock is ticking a bit and that he needs to challenge himself to be better so that he can be further depended on for the crew, he can be stronger for the crew, and so that he can continue and progress to his dream about becoming the greatest swordsman. And so I love that in spite of that, that doesn't stop him from being confident and from declaring war in this way and being the Zoro we all know and love. But he continues to fight in this really rough around the edges fight intentionally, but that flows really well in terms of the panel work. And he thinks to himself as he's unable to cut him, what am I lacking? And we get a flashback to Zoro's sensei, Koshido. Zoro asks him how he can cut through steel, and Koshido says that the pinnacle of swordsmanship is the ability to cut and not cut depending on one's will. To sheathe your sword, so to speak. That injuring everything you touch is really not a sword. You have to protect what you can protect and cut what you must cut and refrain if you can and be controlled and be very zen. So Zoro thinks to this and he's refueled back to the present in their fight. And he says that he'll cut Mr. One down and that it's a shame that Mr. One won't be able to see him cut steel because it'll result in him dying. And so he thinks back to Koshido's words about a sword that doesn't cut anything, huh? And in the midst of this, he's literally lifting up a building. This man. Understandably, Zoro doesn't really understand his master's words about cutting and not cutting, but he does know that perseverance is also the way of the sword, and so he keeps trying. And he continuously gets beaten up, on the brink of death seemingly. He thinks to himself, I must not show my back. Scars on the back are a swordsman's shame, etc. I love the callback to that. I love that he continuously thinks of that and would die for his pride, rather than run away. Just that conviction. So he shows him his front, and he further gets sliced up. Then a bunch of rubble falls on Zoro, and he miraculously survives. And he thinks of his friends in this moment as he just kind of stands there like a badass. And the thoughts going back to his friends is very heartfelt, and I really love it. But notably, he says here he knew where the rocks of rubble would fall. That's how he survived. And he was able to sense all that was around him. He felt this integrative feeling of connectedness of everything around him. He felt himself to be in this sort of zone where he could hear the breathing, quote-unquote, of the things all around him. This sort of intuitive sense. And he wonders if this is what his master meant by the power to not cut. And he questions, will this lead me to being able to cut steel? And he thinks it will. He can hear the breathing of Mr. One Steel's skin, and in the end uses this intuition that he's now gained to then approach him and go, all that's left is to really try it out. And so he bangs it all on one swipe here, on offense here. And in this beautiful spread, you guys know the one, he destroys Mr. One and says, thank you, a showing of gratitude for making him stronger, for being able to cut steel. It's another step of progress towards his goal of reaching the top of his dream. And this feeling of gratitude, integrated with this sort of oneness and intuition and zen that he imbued into himself after flashing back to his master and his words, it really makes Zoro feel a bit more spiritual, a bit more soulful, a bit less, stubborn and all guns blazing. And he is that. He's still very much that, but this adds this new element of richness and spirituality to him. And the gratitude I just love. He takes in that which makes him stronger, and he's grateful for it. And in another translation, which people referred to me about, he says, I can still get stronger. So he's grateful for getting stronger here, but he can still go further. Now, back in the capital, these guards called the Sumagiri? I don't know the pronunciation, sorry. Guards, the king's elite fighters, essentially take a poison that allows them to gain lethal powers in exchange for their lives. They do this to sacrifice themselves, to put themselves out there to hopefully beat Sir Crocodile in service of the royal kingdom of Alabasta for the king. And obviously, these people were just introduced, so we know this isn't going to work when they, this strategy. We know it's not going to work, but I think it's nonetheless very powerful and very twisted, and it reveals things about Sir Crocodile, and also the lengths that people are willing to go to for their home, in service of what they love, in service of King Cobra, in service of everything here. That's how deep the loyalty goes. And they do this to try to stop Sir Crocodile and make him feel the pain that they themselves have felt, which is very powerful. But Shaka in response calls them fools and wishes they wouldn't have done this. But Crocodile, true to how he is, rubs their noses in it. He says he doesn't want to fight them. He says that them doing this is pointless because they're going to die anyway, and they're just stupid. They're not worth fighting. And it's an example of him stomping all over their pride, reminiscent of kind of things in the Chimera Ant arc for Hunter x Hunter, if you know what I'm talking about. Stomping all over their pride, which is again very thematically antithetical to the crew, who are big penchants for pride and doing things to be proud of and portraying your pride in battle. In response, Shaka transforms, he rages, he uses the Mut fruit to become a jackal. The presentation here is great for Shaka, for Crocodile. It's awesome. There's just such disdain. I can't hear Crocodile's voice, but it just feels through his facial expressions such disdain for the weak, for what he perceives as the weak, I should say. Then we go back to Zoro. Mr. One then says, "You gonna cut diamonds next or something?" And it's a little line that he says in response, but he says that would be a waste. And I like it because it shows that restraint. It shows that, you know, he's not just thinking of the next thing he can do in his journey to the top. He says that would be a waste to cut diamonds. It shows that he's able to be a bit more open-minded in his journey, and I think there's a bit of a parallel with that and Luffy, because we know him and Luffy were kindred spirits from the start. They were both one-minded, focused on their goals, and they would go for their dreams and whatever. They were very stubborn, they were very simple. But here, there's an element of complexity here, because he's able to temper this with maturity, just as Luffy was able to do with Vivi's advice to him, saying you can't just rush in all the time. So I like how both are taking steps back and maturing just a little bit in their journey towards their dream. With Sanji, Usopp, and Chopper, they are all talking about some very sweet dialogue about Luffy and, do you believe he's actually dead? I don't. No, I definitely don't. Like it's very nice. It's a bunch of sweet interactions that I really liked, and they ultimately conclude, no, Luffy's not dead. And things are coming to a head as Nami herself as well, it cuts to Nami and shows her, they're all moving towards Alabasta as well. But what's funny is that a lot of them are running towards there, whereas Zoro is just looks dead on the ground. He has completely been run through. Usopp's full of bandages as well, which is funny. But they're making their way towards Alabasta, and in the meantime, Shaka gets completely decimated by Sir Crocodile. And then at the palace, with Cobra, Sir Crocodile, Vivi, Robin, etc., Koza appears, and he says, I came here to reason with the royal army, but now I see the truth. And Robin's eyes are hidden here, as it kind of intersperses between what he is saying and what we see about Shaka. He is just decimated, like I said. Again, very interesting, hiding her eyes, seems to be hiding her intentions throughout. Very intentional by Oda, and very effective in just keeping you intrigued with what Robin's doing. And Vivi just feels immense despair and sadness. Koza's just really confused, and Sir Crocodile says that this is hilarious. This is just a bunch of headless chickens flogging each other, and he's right. This misunderstanding due to a love for their country has caused this horrific chaos, and Robin puts it bluntly. She says to Koza, what's going on here is the worst case scenario for you. And Sir Crocodile ultimately just owns up to what he's done, and Koza criticizes himself for not seeing this earlier, for being blinded by insecurities and fear and whatever else, and wonders how things would have been different if he just held strong. And your heart really goes out to him, because his heart has consistently been in the right place, but he's just been misguided in one way or another, and led astray by his immense fervor and passion for his home. And it's deeply sympathetic, but I love what Cobra does here. He says to Koza, he yells to him, don't listen. This is the situation, there's nothing we can do to change it, just do what you can to save as many people as you can right now. Amazing leader, amazing thing to do, just let bygones be bygones and do what you can now that you know what you want to do to save people. This is the situation. You can't change the past. Let's just do this now. Because he knows Koza. He knows he's not a bad guy. He knows he didn't intend this. And in this, he essentially forgives him and says, we gotta move forward. All is not lost and we can still salvage this, but you need to snap out of it. And it's very kind, and it's great leadership to focus him and direct his attention to what needs to be done to be productive. And so in response, Koza and Vivi think about what they can do to stop the casualties in the square. Koza starts to run to tell everyone to scatter because the square is going to blow up, but Vivi tells him no, you can't do that because everyone's going to panic and it'll just cause more harm. Instead, she says we need to just stop the rebellion, and it's key for both me and you, specifically you, to do this as well, to get your men to stop. And so they set out to do that. Sir Crocodile tries to stop them, but Shaka, like on the brink of death seemingly, you can say that for a lot of characters throughout this arc, continues to defend them. And we get a flash to this jackal statue as he says, the guardian deity of Alabasta is the jackal, just like Shaka. He's a great man, and Koza thinks back to when he used to train him, and it gets very emotional, and it's just a lovely moment, and it's very sweeping. But Shaka says, I'll hold him off, you guys run and hurry and do what you need to do. And they get into the midst of the fighting, they both raise white flags, and eventually they get both the rebels and the royals to stop fighting through example, and through this display, but Koza then gets shot. And at the beginning of chapter 198, there's this beautiful spread. Koza is shot, and what ends up happening is that there were plants. There were plants from Baroque works, people planted into the royal army as a contingency plan in case things went this way, to just incite more and more fury. So we have this guy who was posing as a fake royal who shot Koza here, and incited the conflict to ensue, or to continue. And as Vivi continues to hold to this hope and idealism to stop this conflict, Sir Crocodile says that her idealism makes him want to vomit. And this, more than anything, this is an encapsulation of the thematic duel here. The ideological struggle, hope empowered by connections and trust versus oppression through cold power and dominance. This is that continuation from that theme from Drum Island, and it's that idea of trust is the most overrated thing in the world that Sir Crocodile said before, versus complete trust in your allies, in your people, in yourself, in everything. And Crocodile tells her that it's futile, but she says, I will never abandon my ideals as a true member of the Straw Hats. And he confronts her here, and he says, your entire plan here is futile. Everything you're doing here will only lead to more conflict. You should have told them to evacuate the square, etc. It was all stupid, it was futile, and he pushes her off the top of a wall here. But then Luffy swoops in on a flying creature, which ends up being Pell, to save Vivi. And he swoops in yelling Sir Crocodile's name, and he catches her. And Vivi is amazed and crying, and thinks back to the promise that he made, and it's such an empowering moment. I loved it so much. So heroic. And I think this answers the question of how will Luffy bounce back in response to his loss to Sir Crocodile? With no problems, no issues whatsoever. With determination and passion like he always does. And Vivi, with Luffy, as he catches her here with Pell, is crying, saying that no one could hear her cries as she was trying to get everyone to stop. And Vivi says, don't worry. I could hear him. He told her earlier to lean on people, and he follows through and proves that it's okay to lean on people by being there for her when she needs someone to lean on. It's just beautifully self-fulfilling and proving to her this is how you should live. This is what's beautiful about the world and connection and this found family. And he protects her dream here. And we have Sir Crocodile wondering how he got out of the quicksand. We know it was Robin, so that's funny. The crew celebrates seeing that Luffy is okay. It's beautiful, beautiful scenes of celebration. Nami reunites with Usopp and lambasts him for his party weapons. Luffy tells the party as they reunite, sorry that I was defeated, but now let's end this. And so his bounce back, like I said, it's immediate. Everyone gets hyped. It's an awesome moment. And it's time for the final confrontation. And Vivi is reminded that she isn't alone, as Pell looks on, just happy for what she's been able to find through this crew. And so Luffy gears up for the rematch against Sir Crocodile. Sir Crocodile says you won't be able to hit me, but Luffy just completely bypasses that and punches him right in the face. Noticeably, Robin is amused when she sees this happening, and Luffy says, I realized it back when we fought. It's water. His hand was wet from the water from Yuba, from Toto, and it allowed him to be able to grasp his arm, his hand, like I mentioned in the last video in their fight, so he realized that water makes him susceptible to genuine conflict. And so this bypasses that sand invulnerability thing. So Crocodile's weakness is water. It allows him to be hit. And it also integrates with the fact that he used the dance powder to monopolize the rain and control it, which is pretty smart. So Luffy's going to use this to fight him. He has this barrel and this water that he's going to use. In the meantime, the crew decide that they need to stop the bomb that's the cannon that's over the square and what's going to ensue there. So they set out to stop this as they're pursued by all sorts of billions and Baroque Works agents and everything. There's an awesome moment with Zoro and Sanji as they just go, how much time do we have left? 10 minutes? Let's not think about that. 2 seconds is all we need to take down these guys, or something along those lines. It's an awesome moment. And Vivi thinks to herself, this is the moment of truth. This is the moment that will decide her kingdom's fate. This is where the tides of history will shift in one way or another. And she feels the immense weight of it. Luffy and Sir Crocodile continue to square off, and Luffy just continues to tout his belief that he can beat Sir Crocodile, despite it still being an uphill task to defeat Sir Crocodile, despite him being mortal, I guess you could say, or vulnerable due to the water. And he fights him and uses this tactic, and it doesn't end up paying dividends right away. And Sir Crocodile says the same thing again and again. You seriously think that'll work? Yup. Which I love as a summary of Luffy's perseverance. It's him in a nutshell. It's not totally mindless, and there is point to it, but he will persist. He'll try again and again to do what he needs to do. And as this fight goes on, Cobra and Robin are off at the side, kind of marveling at it. Cobra asks who this guy is, this incredible guy who's fighting Sir Crocodile, and Robin answers pretty genially. As this happens, Luffy drinks a bunch of water and then empties it all on Croc. Robin laughs and finds him amusing. You can tell she's adhering herself to Luffy a little bit. She has a bit of a soft spot for him. It's at this point in the fight, because this is very comical stuff that's going on with Luffy versus Sir Crocodile, the grandest of stakes. The entire kingdom is at risk here. And so, but there's comical stuff here. There's comic relief. There's humor. And what I want to say about this is some might think that this is tonally jarring, too big of a whiplash, because there shouldn't be comedy in a fight with these sorts of stakes. Luffy shouldn't be having these water gags as he fills up and Robin laughs at him and etc. I couldn't disagree more with that sort of sentiment. Everything's contextual. There are no rules to these sorts of things. Sometimes tonal whiplash can be bad, other times it can be very appropriate. It's not jarring here because of the context. It shows that Luffy has the momentum here. He has the belief, even in spite of the face of this seemingly insurmountable foe and this task. There's a gag of him springing a leak as he's full of water, and I can understand why people might not be a fan of that approach in the midst of this huge climactic battle, but I love it. I think it just shows that even in the face of peril, Luffy is so confident, he has all the momentum, that this light tone really enhances the amount of empowerment Luffy feels in this moment. Like I said, the momentum is with him, and I think the tone and use of comedy here adds some levity to the situation and shows that Crocodile is really up against it, as the story kind of reflects the momentum in the fight and the rhythm of the fight. And not only that, but I think it's representative of One Piece's tone as a whole. It never stays too serious. It always comes back to that silliness, that charm. But in the middle of this, Robin tells Cobra that his time is up, and she says, "Take me to the Poneglyph." Sir Crocodile kind of overhears this and calls Robin by name, saying to get out of here, and Cobra hears Robin's name, which makes him pause. There's recognition there. Crocodile then shows off this new kind of power that makes the entire courtyard they're fighting in disintegrate. Everything that he touches, like a sort of sprawling power, everything he touches, it decays and it branches out. Kind of reminds me of Shigaraki from My Hero Academia. But it's really cool because we see here what went on in the first introduction we had to Sir Crocodile with the phone call with Sanji, where we see him by a flower, touching a flower that then decays. I was kind of wondering how that would play into it, and that ends up being this is the reason why. It's this power. His right hand dries up literally anything, sucks the life out of them, decay, That's very thematic of what Sir Crocodile is trying to do to this place. He's trying to suck the life out of it for his own gain. And so I think that decay is pretty key. Robin and Cobra are then making their way over to the Poneglyph, and Tashigi is there with her men, and she stops them. Cobra tells them to evacuate the square, not worry much about him. They continue to delay Robin, and Robin gets genuinely aggravated and dispatches of the men. And I found that interesting. It was the first time that she really lost her cool. And then Tashigi one man talked about how he recognized Robin as someone who dismantled a bunch of Navy ships, 6 I think it was, at age 8, and got a 79 million berry bounty, and then disappeared after that. And Robin yells again, saying, "Just get out of our way, she's losing patience," etc. And that veneer of mocking amusement and laid-backness and playfulness, it all goes away here, which I find interesting, because she started panicking a little bit in response to being in a rush and Tashigi delaying them, which is understandable, but then in response to them saying that she did these horrible things is when she gets the most upset. So I wonder, what's going on there? Does she think that's inaccurate? Does that represent a time in her life that she's not fond of? Is it a lie? Does she not like what she did? I don't know, but it's really interesting. There's some sort of pain and aggravation in response to all this from her. But eventually Tashigi tells her men to stop the explosion in the square. She continues to confront Robin, and Robin just overpowers her, and then at the same time, Sir Crocodile starts dehydrating Luffy with his right hand. There's 6 minutes left before the cannon, the bomb goes off in the square. Sir Crocodile and Luffy are still fighting. Sir Crocodile's dehydrating him and mocking him, just saying, enjoy the show, etc. Again, pride, ego, everything. And then Luffy is dropped into the sand dehydrated and is thinking that I have to get to the mausoleum, probably to get to the poneglyph or something like that. And what happens is a shot of water that he launched into the air from earlier in the fight went down and hit his dehydrated body, which allowed him to get right back up again. And it's funny because there's obviously an element of he definitely was aware of the resourcefulness of water, but there's no way he could have predicted that this exactly would happen in this way. And then the water came back to him and rehydrated him. So I just think it's another thing to add to the element of there being this weird sort of cosmic luck when it comes to Luffy a little bit. Or maybe I'm reaching a bit, but either way, it was interesting. And it's kind of beautiful that the source of it was Yuba's water, this symbolism of hope that comes back to those who persevere with hope in their hearts, you know? I think that's kind of poetic and beautiful that it comes back to help Luffy, the representation of what Toto stands for. Cobra then takes Robin to the mausoleum where she begins reading the poneglyph. Apparently not many people in the world can read it, but Robin can, and that's why Sir Crocodile has not killed her yet, because of this utility. But she seems to have a plan, and she says that the poneglyph is supposed to reveal the Pluton's location. And then Cobra drops the mask and says that generations of Alabasta's leadership are entrusted with defending that. That is their goal. That is their duty. And I find that interesting because what Cobra says here is that is the only duty imparted to the leaders of Alabasta. But he has taken on this responsibility of serving the people. He's very much a for the people kind of guy. So he's taken on more of what his duty was supposed to be, which was only supposed to be to guard this. So it makes me curious about the previous generations of Alabasta and what their leaders were like. Were they in contrast to Cobra? Is his benevolence, is that a new thing in Alabasta? The crew continue to look for a way to stop what's going on in the square. Luffy then, on the way to the mausoleum, sees Tashigi, and it's said here that Tashigi had been scoffed at and mocked by Sir Crocodile, who had passed by her earlier, and he mocks her, and he talks down to the ideals of justice that she apparently has. And so she tells Luffy, knowing that there's nothing else she can do here except her defeat, she tells Luffy where he went and points to the direction of the Royal Mausoleum. And she ruminates after this and seems to think about what Crocodile said to her and takes it to heart, the ideals of the justice in the Navy and her weakness. And it really just brings to attention, is she discouraged about her ideals? Is she questioning her ideas of justice? Does she feel this pain at her weakness? You know, the idea of the weakness of womanhood that she's talked about in the past. Is that coming back, and is this a sort of reminder of that really painful fact? And not only that, but she has been opposed to pirates for a long time, and she has to place her hopes on a pirate to stop this. So that must sting in itself. There's going to be more I talk about with Tashigi. I think she has some great stuff in this arc that I'll talk about right at the end of the arc, but this is the most interesting stuff she's had up until this point for me. I think it was really good. Like, her beliefs are totally turned on their head. She has to trust a pirate, she curses her weakness in doing so, and one of the 7 warlords of the sea is someone she is going against. She doesn't seem to have control. Before, earlier in the series, she asked Zoro why he didn't kill her, or why he couldn't fight her, and now Robin doesn't kill her either. She seems to have no control about where she dies or if she dies, or her control over her life. And that lack of control, that lack of agency, it seems like, must be deeply frustrating in conjunction with everything else she's gone through and her hang-ups. It's all really good. But then the party are continuing to look for it. Luffy, on the way to the mausoleum, falls. His weakness and his wounds catch up with him, and there are 4 minutes left. Back inside the mausoleum, Robin seems to be a little bit underwhelmed by what she's reading on the poneglyph. She asks Cobra if there's more there, and Cobra says no. Then Sir Crocodile arrives and asks her what it says, and she reads out this detailed history of Alabasta and the founding of Alabasta, or important historical events in Alabasta. She just reads this out from this hieroglyphic, and there's nothing about the Pluton. And Sir Crocodile's disappointed in that, but kinda bites that back and goes, okay, I'll kill you now then. I don't need you anymore, to Robin. She came to him 4 years prior to provide him with a way to getting this Pluton, but it's led to nothing, so he'll dispose of her now. Cut and dry, very simple. He seems to respect her, and he says there's nothing personal behind this, no hard feelings, because there's no anger, because he's learned to not trust people, and so he expected that something like this might happen, which is a sad concept. I don't feel bad for Sir Crocodile, of course, but that concept alone, not expecting anything from anyone because you've learned that trust is just overrated and will likely lead to disappointment, that's a sad concept associated with him. And so I do hope we learn a bit more of his backstory maybe in the future, because, I mean, he doesn't die. But Robin anticipates that he would do this, knowing him well, and she's ready to fight. She pours water on him, but he then stabs her, and again utters that line that I already alluded to. He doesn't feel any malice or anger or whatever towards her because he never expected anything from the start, never trusted. Again, direct opposite to Luffy, Vivi, the crew, and everything they stand for. And he says from Cobra's reaction that he knows it exists, and so he'll continue to pursue the Pluton. But in this moment, Cobra, I don't remember exactly what he did, but he activates something, he does something that essentially takes down the mausoleum, so that he resolves to die here with Sir Crocodile, to take him with him. Cobra's got so much great material in this arc. Now, during all of this, the crew, Vivi's with Usopp, and then they send out a flare because Vivi understands where the bomb must be. She sends out a flare, and the rest of the crewmates see the flare, and they start making their way towards it. What's hilarious is it shows you flashes of where these characters are, and Zoro, with his horrible sense of direction, he is like in a jungle, in a tropical oasis somewhere. Who the hell knows where Zoro went? But he sees the flare, and he's like, okay, I gotta make my way towards that. But it's just a nice little bit of subtle comedy there, that visual comedy, that I think is a nice bit of levity, and I definitely got a good laugh out of that. Luffy then wakes up from being passed out and finds a Sir Crocodile-shaped hole in the ground, and he follows it to the mausoleum. Everything's collapsing. Vivi and Usopp are going towards where they think the bomb, the cannon, is. Luffy eventually makes his way into the mausoleum, and he finds Sir Crocodile, and he sees him there, and everything's come tumbling down, and Robin is underneath some rubble, in a horrible state, obviously. She's been stabbed, and she looks on at Luffy and Crocodile with another curious look, as Sir Crocodile marvels at how Luffy continuously comes back from death. And I love it because he's like physically proving that he's the antithesis to Sir Crocodile. This guy who just uses power, pure power, to beat down those who oppose him. This antithesis, Luffy defies him by continuously bouncing back. Again, kind of that rubber element to his character. That hope, that perseverance, that trust, it always prevails. Well, it will prevail here. And Luffy says to Sir Crocodile to give back what he took. And Sir Crocodile says, I never took anything. I'm about to take the kingdom, but it's not mine. And Luffy says, no, you took it ages ago. This is not Vivi's kingdom. If it was her kingdom, she'd be laughing a lot more. Because something in the shape of Vivi's image would provide her with joy, not sadness, so he took it from her long ago. And Luffy then punches Sir Crocodile in an amazing, completely visceral, gratifying moment. I loved it. Using his blood as the water to make him vulnerable, which is just so metal, so raw. Sir Crocodile respects his perseverance. He gives him some respect, surprisingly enough, and he removes the cover to his hook to reveal that he has poison in the hook, and says, okay, now this is a pirate's fight. The loser will die here. And Luffy says, yeah, I get it. And at this point I realized, like I had said earlier, I didn't think that Luffy or anyone would get Luffy specifically, would get a victory over Croc, because it felt like it was maybe a bit too soon, or that it maybe it would have been a longer term goal, something to happen in 100 chapters, or 200 chapters, or a further arc down the line, or something like that, to show that Luffy had increased in strength. But literally 25 chapters later, Luffy is fighting him to the death, and it's not that he's grown a ton, but he's been able to understand things about the state of Croc's power understand what he wants to do to protect Vivi, and just gather himself and once again go at it, bounce back, perseverance. And so it wasn't what I was expecting. I didn't expect them to fight again so soon in this arc, and spoiler, Luffy beats him. So I guess you could say that Oda surprised me in a couple of ways through this. Zoro makes his way towards the signal flare. He sees the Navy and he goes, oh crap. God, I gotta avoid these guys. But then they end up helping him. His horrible sense of direction, he's not even going the right way to the signal flare, and they go that way, that's the way. So they start helping him. And so he notices that Tashigi is helping him. They're in league together. And it just reminds me of what Smoker said. Follow your own sense of justice to her. At this point, she has no other real choice. Her justice is taking down Sir Crocodile, and to do that, she has to enlist the help of these pirates. It's not carrying out her own justice in the way that I think she wanted to, but nonetheless, I think it shows a humility in being able to step back and not be stubborn and realize when you need help, to lean on others, one could say, a common theme of the arc. But Usopp and Vivi are running to where the cannon will go, where she thinks it's hidden. Usopp shows some nice inspiration and leadership to her here, as Vivi's being distracted by the people in the streets just being hurt by the blood there. Usopp just goes, no, eyes forward. We just got to focus on this. We got to do what we can do now, in the way that kind of Cobra said to Koza earlier on. They join up with Nami and Chopper, and they go to the clock tower, this place where this weapon must be hidden. And it's clever, because this was right under our noses this whole time. This was ticking down the time until the bomb would go off, bookending some of the chapters. It's been, the visual of the clock tower has been right in front of our noses the whole time. So the fact that it's here, where it was literally showing us, is kind of clever. It's a nice little wink. The Luffy Sir Crocodile fight ensues. It's very intense, very beautifully but roughly drawn to show off the desperate stakes of the fight. There's a moment that I didn't really understand, but it's very clever, where I had someone in chat had to explain to me what actually happened there, because just the visuals lost me a little bit. But what happened was Luffy was about to punch him, and then he realized he was about to touch his right hand, which would have dehydrated him, so he stops his hand and fist with his own leg. And then Crocodile talks about Luffy's annoying persistence, and then says that eventually the poison, the blood loss, whatever, it's all going to start to affect him. And Luffy says, you don't get it. You don't get what? But we go back to the crew, and they're like, we have to get up to the top of the tower, and Sanji and Zoro are both already there. Sanji makes sense because he was closer. Zoro makes no sense whatsoever because he was in that goddamn oasis or whatever, but it's hilarious both are up there. But the thing is, Vivi says that they can't get access to where she thinks the bomb is, but Nami has an idea. Yet at the top of the clock tower are Mr. Seven and Miss Father's Day, ready to do their thing. We get a really nice moment with Tashigi, who ends up attacking this Broke Works agent who was a plant, I believe it was, and her men are confused. They're like, who do we attack? They're dressed up like royals. I don't know who to get. And she just goes, just trust your judgment. Make a snap judgment, and you'll know who the bad guys are. And I love it because it's very similar to what Smoker told her. Trust your judgment, follow your sense of justice, that intuition. You know, she's a bit down in the dumps because of what had happened to her, but nonetheless, I love that she still has the trust in her own intuition in this situation, because it stands her in good stead. Like, Smoker was not inaccurate in trusting her intuition. And then finally it's time. The clock strikes 4:30 and the bomb is supposed to go off. Or rather the cannon, because the job of Mr. Seven and Miss Father's Day is to shoot the cannon into the crowd in the square below. And again, it's just chaos, it's pandemonium. We cut to Sir Crocodile versus Luffy again in the mausoleum, and Sir Crocodile asks him, what don't I get? What don't I get? He cannot conceptualize what Luffy is talking about, and he just doesn't understand Luffy, which I love, because how could he? How could he understand the most hopeful, idealistic person who pursues his dreams with such passion and conviction, and trusts everyone, and makes friends, and connects with people, and values those connections? How could someone like Crocodile ever understand Luffy? So I love that he just can't even comprehend him. Luffy doesn't answer his question about what he doesn't get. He keeps quiet. But we have Cobra looking on, we have Robin, even still. And then back with the crew, Nami comes up with this ridiculous plan using a bunch of, again, Nami being very resourceful, a mix of powers and just situational awareness, is able to shoot up Chopper and Vivi using Usopp at the beginning, then Sanji to kick them further, and Zoro to toss them further up to the top level of the clock tower to stop them from shooting the cannon. That's the goal here, and they start executing it. But then we cut back to Luffy and Sir Crocodile, who asks Luffy the question he always gets asked. Why are you risking your life for this kingdom? For this person? Why are you doing it for her? And we know this. He will do anything for his friends because he trusts them, and he loves them. But Sir Crocodile would never understand, and he says, you don't get it. And he explains something about Vivi. He says she fights for others, but she'll get killed if she continues along that trajectory, because she constantly puts herself at risk and bends over backwards for her people. And so we need to be there to save her to make sure she doesn't die, which is interesting because what Luffy says here, putting yourself at risk for other people, your life at risk. So one, Vivi has taken on Luffy's trait in that self-sacrificial nature. Like, I'm not saying she never had that in her before, but the way it manifests, I think, is something that's rubbed off on her from Luffy. So she mirrors Luffy in that way, putting herself out there, putting her life on the line for others. And the second thing here that's interesting is Luffy's able to see this from an outside perspective. The thing that he does all the time, he's able to see it in someone else who he doesn't necessarily associate with that sort of self-sacrifice. He saw it in Zoro and Baratie and was holding himself back, but I think it's a bit different to see someone like Vivi do it, who he might not have expected that from in the beginning. Sir Crocodile says to just walk away, and Luffy says, I'm not gonna let my friend die. If she fights to save the kingdom, so will we. Her journey, her fight is our fight. That togetherness, that connection. And Cobra's watching all of this in shock, just seeing this amazing group of friends his daughter has gotten. And Sir Crocodile says, even at the cost of your life, you're gonna fight for her? And Luffy says, if we die, we die. That's what we're resolved to do. Living for ideals, living for dreams, and dying for dreams if need be. Dying proudly if it comes to that. We then cut back to the crew who are in dire straits as Mr. 7 and Miss Father's Day are see Chopper and Vivi in midair and are about to shoot them down. There are 7 seconds left. Luffy succumbs to the poison and he falls down. He continues fighting, but he's just kind of struggling. Sir Crocodile taunts him again, saying it's all in vain, it's futile, again lording over him like he tends to do. Vivi gets launched further by Zoro, and she's getting ready to get the bomb, and then there's a bunch of integrated flashes. Sir Crocodile says it's all over. He outstretches his arm or his hand. We see the fighting, we see Tashigi, we see Cobra, we see the crew, and then we get a bit of a flashback to the past when Vivi and Koza and all their crew would play in this location in the clock tower. We see Shaka and Pell talking about where Vivi must have gone, and it's very touching. We see the clock tower symbolic of the passing of time, and what I see as nostalgia and sentiment and wanting to go back to those innocent days without conflict, where people, young and old, different hierarchies, different points in society could live in harmony. This flashback, I think that's what that represents, and I think that's what the clock tower represents in a couple of ways. Time may pass, but the heart of the kingdom needs to stay the same, and that is what they're fighting for here. Vivi then cuts the fuse, and so she stops it, but Sir Crocodile had contingencies, so there's a timer that'll set a bomb off in case the first one doesn't go off in the square. So he had prepared for this. And Vivi feels defeat in this moment. She reflects on Crocodile, just feeling the hope draining, seeing that the bomb is seemingly inevitable no matter what she tries, seeing that this doom seems to be inevitable, and the crew themselves despair. But then, cutting through all of this, we have Luffy in his fight with Sir Crocodile, who just says that he'll never lose to him. He represents total and complete hope, and it's like a knife cutting through this tension and despair and tragedy with this light. And Luffy is in a horrible state. He's full of poison. He's all beat up, and Crocodile says, "You're more dead than alive." And Luffy says, "I'm gonna be the Pirate King." To which Crocodile repeats what he said to him in that fight before, "You're not special. People like you are not rare at all on the Grand Line. You're not special. You're not going to achieve what you want to achieve. You're not unique." And what he says is something interesting. He says that the more you learn of the sea, the more impossible dreams seem, which is a very interesting thing for him to say, along with the trust is overrated thing. Is he speaking from experience? Is that why he is the way he is? Will we get a backstory? I really hope we do, but that's a really interesting line from him. The more you experience on the Grand Line, or of the sea, the more you'll realize how foolhardy it is to have dreams, to have trust. He's become cynical, and it really is a nice hook pun intended, into what might have led him to think this way. We then flash back to an experience with Pell and Vivi from the past. He scolded Vivi because she was hiding in the tower, or she had been playing in the tower. He said to never go in there because it's dangerous, and he hits her. He actually strikes her. Igaram, in this flashback, says, we gotta have this guy, we gotta get rid of him. But Cobra says no, leave him be for a second. And he does with good reason, because as we see, Pell's reasoning for hitting her, well, I don't think it's forgiving that. I think it's just laying it out there. But his reason for hitting her was because he couldn't bear to lose her. He just cares so much for Vivi, and he doesn't want her to be hurt or be put in danger, that he really wants to nail it into her. Don't do these dangerous things. He says to a crying child Vivi that if anything happened to you, I'd be heartbroken. But then we cut to a situation where Pell, in his bird form, is flying Vivi around in the skies, and they both have these beautiful smiles on their faces as they just take everything in. It's a lovely moment. And he says, the king must never know about this. Just keep it our little secret, which is very cute. And then Vivi asks him why he's always training, and he says, because I need to be ready to fight. And she presses and says, well, what's the need for that? And he goes, it's to defend, actually. I train to defend, not attack or not fight. It's to defend the place. And she goes, what's the difference? And he says, the intention. Defend your kingdom if necessary, protect it, but don't intend to fight. And that distinction is very key for the whole philosophy with coming from the top down from Cobra. And it's what Shaka did. He didn't want to fight the rebels, but he had to defend the place, because you defend your home if it comes to it. But if you can avoid this conflict, then do it. Peace is their foremost goal. It's an encapsulation of Cobra, like I said, from the top down. And then back to the present, outside of the flashback, Pell says to Vivi, he comes up to her and he says, serving your family was the greatest honor I could imagine. And he takes the bomb and he grabs it and he flies it up into the sky to protect Alubarna and the capital and all the people from harm. And overlaying it, it's a beautiful scene, beautifully poetic, very engaging, very gripping and sweeping and emotional. Overlaying it, it says, I am the guardian spirit of Alabasta, the falcon. Just like Shaka with the jackal, also there's the falcon. And he sacrifices himself, and it blows up way above the sky, and Alubarna is totally unharmed. And so to quickly get at the elephant in the room here, when I read that, I was very affected by it. I thought it was an extremely powerful death scene. I thought it was a beautiful death scene. I think it was the type of death scene that elevated a character tenfold and made me think of Pell in a much... like, I liked Pell before, but this sacrifice and this commitment and this last emotional moment really elevated him and left a lasting impact that made me think of him as this really very good minor character that sacrificed himself for his kingdom, his home, for the people he loved. And those sorts of deaths, those impact deaths, can really heighten your appreciation for characters. And this whole chapter, this moment, it was all beautiful. I had nothing but praise for it. But let's skip ahead and address the elephant in the room here. It's revealed later on that this didn't kill Pell. He miraculously survived. He got some help in the desert by some medic or something, and he ended up being okay. I'm not a fan of that. To be honest, that's the closest thing to a detrimental flaw I've seen in the series up until this point, which is crazy because this is the best arc up until this point for me. So it having this major flaw, not a huge flaw that drags everything down, but nonetheless a significant flaw to me, is interesting. But I do have to be honest and say I was disappointed. I think Pell should have stayed dead. I think that was a beautiful death scene, and I think it added so much, and I think that whole sweeping moment was so beautiful and encapsulating of everything that Cobra stands for, everything that he's taught to his men and what they stand for and what they are emblematic of, and what Alabasta is. And that you're able to sacrifice yourself for these ideals and in service of this hope that it all represents. And so that sacrifice was so meaningful for me. But knowing that it ends up with him surviving after, it makes it all ring very hollow. It feels undercut. All the appreciation I had for Pell, not all of it, because he still intended to kill himself and sacrifice himself for that, so it's not all gone. But it does feel bitter, you know? It feels like, why couldn't he just stay dead? I wish Oda had kept him dead. Not because I don't like Pell, but because that moment, that chapter, those beautiful, one of the best moments in the series up until this point for me, it rings hollow knowing that it doesn't actually lead to a sacrifice that monumental. And that's even just tossing aside the logical side of it, because I don't know what caused him to be able to survive that sort of explosion. Who the hell knows? Someone in my chat said that maybe he dropped it a little bit while he was in the sky. He dropped it a little bit so that he'd maybe survive. But that doesn't make much sense to me, because he was doing it, the whole reason he was doing it, he had resolved to die, and he was doing it so that Alabasta wouldn't have to experience that explosion. It's risky to drop it. Like, it's risky to drop it when you're in the sky. It could do damage to Alabasta. It could do damage to Alabasta just for this self-preservation when he'd already committed to doing it. I don't know. I don't really buy that logic. But like I said, even setting aside how it happened, how he survived, I don't like what it does for the moment. I don't like what it does for his character. I'm not going to harp on it, but I was disappointed by that, unfortunately. But back to the present, there's just dead silence after that. It's devastation. As Vivi realizes what's happened to Pell, what he's done, the paneling is great, the framing, you don't see her eyes, there's just shock, and you can almost hear the quiet desert wind as people just kind of react to what's just happened. And by people, I mean primarily Vivi, because the fighting continues. The fighting continues after that, and no one really realizes what's happened, save for like Tashigi, the crew, and Vivi. Nothing really changes, because what's crazy is they didn't know. No one told them that there was this bomb, and they were fighting regardless. So even though by Vivi's perception, something's been avoided, a catastrophe's been avoided due to this sacrifice, nothing changes for anyone else. And Tashigi thinks here, as she sees everyone fighting, about what Smoker said, that history will hinge on these events, one way or another. And I think she's wondering to herself, what type of impact will this have on history? What's about to occur? And in one of the most heartbreaking scenes in the series so far, Vivi just, I get emotional thinking about it. I just love Vivi so much. She screams her lungs out, her heart out, to stop fighting. She just yells it constantly, stop fighting, stop fighting, stop fighting. And it doesn't get through to them. And the expressions really, really sell it. Oda just makes her look so desperate. It really just feels like she's at her last wits about this. This is all she has left, and all she can do is desperately just scream as she sees her kingdom crumble around her. And it's just such a dark, desperately sad moment. Like I said, I'm getting emotional just thinking about it, because I really care about Vivi, and seeing her go through this pain, it's not easy to think about, to see. And the crew understand what's happening, and they want to stop the fighting. And Nami it's very sad for Nami as well. She realizes what's happening. She's just like, do anything to get them to stop it. They're desperate. And Luffy continues to fight Sir Crocodile. Sir Crocodile says something, "Don't you know who I am?" Again, very prideful. And Luffy goes, "I don't care. I'll beat you." Luffy, like we've talked about in the AJP's comments, he doesn't care about the reputation of people. He makes his own judgments, and he does what he needs to do in response to those judgments. And what he does here is evaluate that Sir Crocodile is no good. He doesn't care about his reputation, and he's going to take him down. And there are amazing visuals and illustrations throughout all of this. Their fight comes... I can't really articulate the details of what happens in their fight. It's just amazing spectacle, and it comes to an end as Luffy beats Crocodile, his Gum Storm beating his Desert Storm. And the crew and Vivi and maybe Tashigi as well are able to see that Croc has been defeated. And Vivi emotionally thinks back to what Luffy said, "I'm gonna kick his butt," etc. And the party realizes it, but the fighting continues. Nothing changes. And Vivi continues to scream more and more and more, "Just stop fighting." And she can't get through to them. But what does is it starts raining. The rain comes down. And we cut to Koza, his hand outstretched, feeling the rain, and thinking back to his dad's trust in the king and his trust that it will rain. And he receives the rain. Koza is receptive to it. He always wanted it. He never wanted to believe that it wouldn't come, but he just couldn't find it within himself to believe anymore. But this proves that his dad was not mistaken to believe. And this is so beautiful and so poetic as the rain comes down, and this hope, this representation of all this hope and this idealism that represents Cobra, that represents Vivi, that represents Toto, the party. This drought, which is synonymous with the Baroque works infiltration, just cuts through all of this and makes everyone just look up and realize something changed. The rain clears the smoke away, and Luffy defeats Sir Crocodile. Cobra's very concerned for him. As everyone sees the rain, Vivi's voice finally reaches them. Stop fighting. And they see her, and they stop, realizing what's going on with Sir Crocodile. And there's a lovely moment of comedy as Usopp starts talking about Sir Crocodile and going, that guy, what a loser, blah, blah, blah. It's pretty funny. And everyone else is silent, just reflecting. And Vivi says, the nightmare's over. Sir Crocodile's defeated, and Cobra goes over to Luffy and thanks him, and Luffy just grins back. It was nothing, no problem. But the place starts to crumble, so they gotta kinda rush out of there. And cutting back to the square and all the conflict, even though they stop fighting, there are complaints, nonetheless, of people who say, how do we appease the souls of the dead? And I think it's very understandable. I think it's very understandable that, they stop because of Vivi here, but they're not satisfied. There's this need and there's this feeling to compensate and to make things right and make things whole because of the spirits of their departed friends and family and whatever. And I think that's very understandable. Obviously, we don't want that to happen, but I think it's very natural and human that they think that way. But then Shaka comes in and tells them to lay down their swords. Igaram comes in, carrying the boy who was trying to enlist in the rebels. And it's a very emotional moment as Igaram, it's the flashback shown as Igaram said, I'll meet you to Vivi in our homeland. And he fulfilled the promise. Everyone's surprised he's alive, and he comes with that kid who then explains through what he witnessed, that it was all a hoax. Koza backs him up, Igaram further explains it, and everyone begins throwing down their weapons. Immediately after this, though, her kingdom restored, her dream fulfilled, the biggest indication that Vivi has grown and learned and gotten so much more out of life than she had before through being with the crew is shown here, as despite her goal being achieved, the one goal she had from the start, she now has an element to her life that is as important, and that is her found family, the Straw Hats. She goes to make sure that they're alright. She can't find them because they've gone to find Luffy, and we see that Cobra is carrying Luffy out of the wreck, and I love it. It's like a give and take. Luffy put Alabasta on his back, so Cobra puts Luffy. I just love Cobra throughout all of this. And Luffy is sleeping, and Cobra throughout this is lauding his bravery. And Sanji and the rest of the crew meet up with him and go, hey, that's our captain. We'll take him off your hands. And Vivi then meets them. She meets up with them and sees her father and then goes, we need to give you guys credit for this, because her and the king, Cobra, need to address the public so that the celebration can start. And she wants to give credit where credit's due to her family, to the Straw Hats. But they say, very understandably, they didn't do this to get mixed up in politics. They cannot get mixed up in politics. And I think it's Sanji who smiles and says, we're notorious pirates, remember? They don't need the credit here. They never did this to be recognized by the public. They did this to help their friend. They did this because they wanted to protect her dream. And they don't need credit. Her achieving her dream was all they really wanted, and all the reward they could have dreamed of. And so they're satisfied here, and they go, do your thing, you don't have to do anything for us. We did this for Alabasta and for you, and because we wanted to. And they all pass out right there, just totally exhausted. We then cut to Tashigi, who apprehends Sir Crocodile, strips him of all his titles, he's not a warlord anymore, and he gets sentenced into an imprisonment, I believe. And then we see Koza and all his people and the rebels, and he has regrets for what he did in causing this. And Cobra repeats kind of what he said to him before. We all have regrets, we all made mistakes, but all we can do now is move forward and rebuild things from the ashes. We have our people, the rot has been removed, and the future's bright, so let's just look forward, let bygones be bygones. As you would expect from such a great guy, such a great king. It's time to move forward, don't worry about the past, and live. Let's just simply live together. It all leads to this beautiful spread of this speech that King Cobra has as he addresses all his citizens, saying, long live Alabasta. And overlaying this very poetically, the dialogue says, the battles of Alabasta's devastating war, along with those battles never mentioned in the pages of history, finally came to an end. Along with those battles never mentioned in the pages of history, as it shows the passed out Straw Hat crew. Beautiful. again adds to this feeling of this legendary tale of One Piece being this chronicling of Luffy's legend. And there are untold tales here, people who won't get the credit that you would say they deserve, but who never needed it, never wanted it, never needed the spotlight, and just did their duty, protected their friend, helped her, and moved on, following their dreams. In what ends up being a pretty hefty kind of epilogue and conclusion to the arc. Definitely the longest so far, but I'm a fan of it because it was very substantial and very rich, full of great stuff. We go back to Smoker, who is with Black Cage Hina, who speaks in third person a lot of the time, which is interesting. And this is the pretty woman who, in the midst of the full-body Django cover story, walked by them that one time. And she asks Smoker, did you use the dance powder to make it rain on Alabasta? And Smoker says, hell no. That would undercut Cobra's sentiment. That would betray his will. He didn't want to do that in the first place at all because that would have been abusing it, and he just wanted to rely on the natural cycle of things and how that would happen. And that belief is what kept him moving forward. Of course, Smoker, being as intelligent as he is and understanding as he is, wouldn't want to disrespect that by artificially bringing the rain to Alabasta. And I think that shows his very soft side, which Hina acknowledges and says, when did you start caring about others? Going soft? Yeah, he is. He's going soft. And I love him for it. I love Smoker. Tashigi's making her way there eventually, but in the meantime, she orders her troops to not lay a finger on the crew, in showing, I think, this respect for them, this begrudging respect for them, which I really like for her character. With everything settled, Vivi tends to Koza in a really beautiful moment as he talks about Toto and he's going to visit him and Yuba will prosper and it'll all be alright. And he'll go to Yuba and he'll update her intermittently about how they're doing, as things will have a new start. And then we see the public dancing, celebrating the rain, and we see Toto alone, who's in Yuba just beaming, smiling, saying, see, I told you guys, the rain would come. Like I've said before, Toto is a personification of the persevering hope in this arc. I think he's a very minor character, but very key nonetheless. And I think that what he adds here is irreplaceable. He really never stopped believing. So the rain continued for many days, the crew recovered, the Desert Kingdom bloomed again as people picked up the pieces and began the process for this new age. There's a lovely scene where the crew is sleeping and Vivi's just watching the rain fall, just taking solace and peace in that, and her and Igaram reflect on Pell. And then Tashigi leaves. She gets to the dock and she meets with Smoker, and she apologizes for letting the Straw Hats go and aiding them, to which Smoker says, don't apologize for that. I told you to follow your will, your sense of justice. And it's also ironic because he himself did that exact same thing. Nothing to apologize for at all. But she says, I didn't follow my own justice. I did it because I had to. I was powerless and needed their help. And she cries and she laments her weakness. And Smoker encourages her, saying, soldiers don't cry over something like this. You need to get stronger. And Tashigi, this being exactly what she needed to hear, screams that she will. And Hina looks on the whole time. Interesting new character. Hina. Smoker instructs them to bring Crocodile on the ship to be transported, and he then gets a call saying that him and Tashigi are going to get all the credit for apprehending Sir Crocodile. They'll be getting medals, they'll be getting promotions and honor. And Smoker is beside himself with rage at this, because he says, it wasn't even us, it was the Straw Hats. They did it, they deserve the credit. Once again, with the Marines and before with Alabasta, with Vivi, both wanting to give credit to the Straw Hats, but neither being able to. Hina tries to tell Smoker that in spite of the Straw Hats overpowering Baroque Works and defeating them and Sir Crocodile and everything, it's futile because the government is going to cover that up and just pin all the credit on them for Alabasta's liberation. And then Smoker just angrily replies that the cover-up is the reason Tashigi is crying in the ship, as it cuts to her, and she's indeed crying, in the first place. This falsity will not do anything. It's just fake. It's fake credit. At the end of the day, she was weak, and she wants to get stronger, and being rewarded for this huge blow, and this feeling of futility and weakness she feels, it's a mockery. And then Smoker, my king, yells to the Marine on the other side of the line, tell them to eat shit. This is real justice. Tell the high-ranking officials trying to cover things up, I'm not interested at all. He has his own sense of justice. He has not respected the brass and the higher ups from the start. That's been clear. And he has respect for acknowledging how much the Straw Hats fought. It's just great stuff for Tashigi. This is my favorite Tashigi moment. I said the previous one was up until this point. This is my favorite Tashigi moment, and this arc did so much for her and even more for Smoker. And it makes you think, Sir Crocodile told Tashigi about weakness, that she's weak, and he laughed at her, and he said that she lacked strength. But what's interesting is that strength is also leaning on others, as we see throughout this arc. Tashigi leaned on others when she needed to, but Tashigi doesn't see that as strength. Or as something that's necessary. She sees it as something that shows her weakness, as opposed to Vivi and the rest of the crew. It's interesting, because that's a bit of a contrast between her and the crew, and I wonder, will that change along the line? It's nice material to make me really invested in how she's going to develop as things progress. But the town is in full recovery mode. Chopper shares some details with the local doctors, Vivi beams looking on, Sanji and Usopp patrol the streets, talking about how strong the kingdom is, which is very nice. Zoro continues to train, notably. He continues to train, keeping in mind the things he gained about the intuition of the breathing of the objects around him and that Zen mode thing he was able to attain. He continues to train on his own, so nice little detail there, making sure not to lose sense of his new abilities. Nami looks through a bunch of King Cobra's books, and what's funny is Shaka is being questioned by Marines, and he tells them to get out of here because they question him for harboring pirates, and he says, no, there are no pirates here, as Usopp and Sanji literally walk by him and wave and say hi. It's very funny. Luffy wakes up after being passed out for a long time. The first thing he asks for is his hat, which is very him. And it's said that Vivi and Chopper took care of him while he slept. Chopper is understandable because he's the doctor, but Vivi, around the clock taking care of Luffy, you can just see the gratitude for what he did for them, her caring for him. She didn't need to do that, but that's the type of person she is. That's the type of ruler she is. Benevolent, compassionate, able to lean on others, able to care for others, and heartfelt. Chopper criticizes Zoro for training when he is still hurt, which is funny, and nice to see that Chopper's really taken to the doctor role really well. And then we have this huge feast. The crew eats and celebrates, and they're ravenously eating, like they're eating like savages, and Vivi is just laughing and beaming, and it's so beautiful to see her again with this family. And the royals look on and they're going, these people are so boorish, look at this. Standing on ceremony, and they go, how can Princess Vivi be captivated by these people? And they're skeptical at first, but they eventually just laugh themselves, which is beautiful for showing the infectious energy of Luffy and the rest of the crew, and how their beautiful idealism just is so, like I said, infectious. It spreads to everyone around them. Everyone here has a great time. The king, Vivi, the rest of the crew, Igaram's wife, who just got introduced, I forgot to mention that, Shaka, it's just beautiful. Terracotta was Igaram's wife's name. And seeing all this, these people of different, who all come from different places and have this common cause and this kinship, just celebrating and eating and sharing. This in itself was Cobra's vision for what Alabasta should be. This is it taking shape right here. This is what they were fighting for from the beginning, and the beauty of the moment really shows that it was absolutely worth it. No standing on ceremony, no posturing, just people connecting, good-hearted people sharing. We then have a bit of a bathhouse segment that's very... there's some, classic anime trope bathhouse stuff. A very odd moment for Cobra, who allows the guys to peek on the women's side while his daughter's there. I don't know what was going on about that. That was strange. But after all those hijinks and whatever, Nami and Vivi share a really nice moment, and Cobra, in the bath, bows down to the crew in gratitude. And he says, I'm not a king in this moment, I'm just a father and a citizen, and I just want to say thank you for helping us and saving us. And Luffy grins. And I didn't mention it, but Nami and Vivi's lovely scene was them talking about and sharing, recounting all the wonderful things they've experienced up until this moment. And then Nami saying, but we shouldn't overstay our welcome. We've got to go soon. And then we learn that through Igaram and Shaka, who see these new bounty posters, that Luffy has a new bounty of 100 million berries, and Zoro has his first bounty of 60 million berries. So they run to go and warn them, but the crew is already left. Little do they know. Also, a beautiful little detail is that Usopp is also in the back, just randomly in the back of Zoro's picture. So, technically, I guess you could say Usopp's bounty is Luffy and Zoro combined. The true threat on the Grand Line. But like I said, they've already gone before they can be warned of their bounties, and Vivi said they've gone to do what pirates do, and that is go out to sea. In the meantime, Django and Full Body become a plot point under the command of Hina to apprehend the pirates because of their bounty and everything, their notoriety, all of that. What I like about this is the cover stories coming to fruition. I would have been totally confused about what's going on with Django and Full Body. Django and the Marines, like, what is happening? But because I read the cover stories, I'm not confused at all, and it's cool seeing it come to fruition. So I like that this is an element of why they're absolutely necessary to pay attention to. So the crew's leaving, there are some nice interactions and funny interactions there, and what I find interesting is that Nami is sad, but she ends up subverting expectations and being sad about saying, fine, I'll let go of the 1 billion berry prize or reward that Igaram promised them. All that time ago in Whiskey Peak. And so she's not concerned about Nami. What I like about that is there seems to be, obviously they're going to miss her, but there seems to be this element of she'll be okay. And even if we're apart, she'll always be a member of the crew and will be connected by this bond. And really, even though they'll separate, they'll always share this connection. So there's no real need to feel super sad about this. Vivi is where she belongs, and we'll miss her, but she'll always have a place on this crew. Now, the conundrum with Vivi is that she has to address the public tomorrow, or the next day, and the Straw Hats are leaving. So she's given this ultimatum, essentially. It's a friendly ultimatum, but it's a choice she has to make. Pirate or princess? Is she going to leave with them? This is the chance of a lifetime, but at the same time, this is her dream to help rule her kingdom and help it prosper and save it, and then build from peacetime. This is her responsibility, and so she has to mull that over. As the crew leave, they meet Mr. Tubon Clay, who's been blockaded by the Marines, and says, let's work together to get out of here. And at the same time, the Marines prepare to apprehend the crew. Vivi gets ready for the coming-of-age ceremony that would have happened 2 years prior, but is now happening now, and I think it's so appropriate that this is her coming-of-age. When she's done all this, she's learned so much, she's had these experiences and grown and made these bonds, and this is truly her coming of age. This entire saga has been a coming of age, and she's being fitted for a dress, and the speech she's going to address the entire nation with will be broadcast throughout the entire kingdom. Mr. Dubon Clay at the same time says to the crew, we gotta leave, but they say no, we have a promise to meet a friend, Vivi, in case she wants to join them. And Oda kinda does a teasing, will she or won't she sort of thing throughout this. There's a lovely moment as Cobra says that she looks like her late mother, which I thought was really beautiful. But Oda's doing the thing, like, is she gonna do it? I always felt from the start that she had to stay here. You guys have seen in the previous videos, I've said, I think after this, they're gonna be victorious, Vivi's gonna survive, but she's gonna have to stay here to rule, because she wants to rebuild this nation. This has been her goal and dream from the beginning, to save it, and then help it prosper from then on. And so it never felt to me that Vivi was actually going to choose the pirate's life. But nonetheless, it was a very difficult choice for her. I knew the story wouldn't go that direction, or I was confident that it wouldn't go that direction, but nonetheless, Vivi, for her, it was a very hard decision to make. And the decision that she makes, I think, is very mature. I think it shows the perspective and maturity that she showed and taught Luffy, and imparted upon him. I think her heart yearned for going with the pirates, but she can't. She really can't. But anyways, I'm getting a little ahead of myself. Mr. Dubon Clay, and seeing that the crew want to meet up with their friend, says that he will do what he can to allow them to escape. And so he decides to defend them and make a stand against the Navy here. He says you can stray from a man's path or a woman's path, but not the path of mankind. Scatter, my friends, to the true sky. Let us make it bloom. Oh, come away. Shall we dance? And he says this to Hina. And in a last stand, his boat blows up in defending the Straw Hats and his friends, in this true showing of camaraderie and friendship, which was quite moving. I was in shock when I first read that, because I'm not convinced that he's dead, But nonetheless, it was a really nice gesture and action that he did here. The crew is crying for his sacrifice. They have this connection with him, and his power had been used for deception before, because in the midst of this, he poses as Luffy and his crew dress up as the rest of the crew. And so before he had used this power for heinous means, but now he uses it for friendship. It ties into that theme of trust and connection, and it harkens back to what he said all that time ago. Friendship does not depend on the amount of time spent together. And so he sacrifices his freedom from the Navy to then give freedom to his new friends. We then get a nice flashback with Vivi resolving all the way back 2 years ago to infiltrate Baroque Works with Igaram. It comes full circle. It all started that day, and Igaram asked her, "Do you have the resolve to stay alive?" And the thing is, she needed help with that a little bit, because she had the resolve to stay alive, but the way she acted wasn't conducive to her staying alive. She put herself at risk, and she needed the crew and Luffy to help cover for her. Because like Luffy said, she bends over backwards for her people, and she sacrifices herself, and she's going to end up killed if we don't help her. So the crew taught her how, in a way, and she learned how to live. And she always had the resolve. Definitely always had the resolve, but without the crew she wouldn't have been able to reach this point, without a doubt. And we see Luffy and the crew fighting their way to the port, to the eastern port to meet her, and Vivi begins addressing all of the people with her speech. It's just such a moving speech. I definitely had tears in my eyes a little bit when I was reading it. She tells the crowd about her epic adventure. She talks about the Going Merry and its crew, how the crew showed her the light in the darkest of times. They taught her to hope, how to laugh, how to live, to never give up, to fight for her dreams. She says that historians will say it's a legend, but for me, this is the truth. This story, I think, One Piece being a legend, but it being this very intimate, personal thing for the cast. And so, because this is broadcast throughout the whole kingdom, the Straw Hats hear her and believe, okay, she's addressing them, so I guess she's not going to come. And they say, Luffy, we should get out of here. But he goes, no, hold on. And what ends up happening is true to what's happened before with Igaram. He is posing as Princess Vivi, and she is talking on a mobile microphone as she's being transported by Karu to where they're supposed to meet. And so Vivi has come to say goodbye to the crew. She's not come to join them. She says that she loves the crew, but her duty to her country is too great. And she's crying as she says this, really showing it's with a heavy heart that she has to say goodbye. And she's saying this into the microphone so they can hear her. And the crowd hears it as well, and they're going, what is going on? They have no idea what she's talking about. But the people who she intends to receive this message receive it. And they understand. Luffy just grins back and goes, that's what you had to do. I get it. And there's a beautiful flashback to Vivi talking about how she liked the Jolly Roger flag. Just reflecting on her journey is so emotional for me. From the beginning, it was tough for her to ingratiate herself into it. But like Nami said, you can't help but just feel at ease with this crew, with these people. And so she asks the crew in the present if they can still be friends in the future. But unfortunately, the Marines who are on the outskirts pursuing them, they would know and things would be implicated if they answered her verbally. There would be problems here, and so they have to walk away, and it's with the heaviest of hearts. But they walk away, backs facing Vivi, and then the best spread in the series up until this point. The most emotional I've gotten. I was just sitting there in shock. My favorite spread, as all the members of the crew raise their arm and show off the sign of their eternal bond, that X mark on their arms. They can't say anything because the Navy will know what's going on and it'll cause trouble, but they don't need to. This is the silent show, the nonverbal communication that they will always be together. And Vivi understands there's no words needed. It was my favorite moment of the arc. It's everything. It's everything about this arc, about this saga, about this story, these bonds, the fighting to protect the experiences that you have together and how you cherish that and how you pursue your own individual ideas of freedom, this common cause and kinship between all these people and this bond that will never be erased. People have asked me in the past, do I think after Alabasta if Vivi will be a member of the Straw Hats, of the crew? And I always answered yes and no, because no, she won't be with them physically. She'll have to stay in Alabasta, like I said before. But she is forever a part of this crew, her and Karu as well. Karu, absolutely. And this spread is everything. Emotional weight, the impact of this, dreams, bonds, freedom, Vivi and her relationship. This arc this hope. It's all here. Of course she couldn't leave her kingdom, but of course they'll always be friends. We then see that Hina's talking to Smoker on the phone, having been unsuccessful, and she goes, "You sound kinda happy about this, that they've escaped, my king." But Alabasta celebrates a new era and go forth from Vivi's speech. People in the street speculate about what it meant. Some are kind of close to the mark, some are off the mark. We see a scene of Toto just smiling at the sky and saying "take care" to Luffy, as Koza grins into the distance with him as well. What awesome impact characters for this arc, Toto and Koza. They were wonderful. But like I said, now's the time to rebuild for this society, for this kingdom. And it's exuberant. Cobra continuously shares cute, fun father stories with the crowd. Shaka goes to Pell's grave and then talks about how he doesn't know why he hasn't shed a tear yet. We know that's a hint to Pell being alive. Vivi and Kadu had, after all that stuff, returned to Alubarna in a lovely little silhouetted shot panel that I really liked. And Alabasta prospers. Tashigi and Smoker then look at Luffy and Zoro's bounties and reflect on their experiences here. And it's also revealed here that Mr. One, who Zoro fought, his name is Daz Bones, so there's that. And they say, we'll catch them one day. I love their dynamic and this antagonist but not actually relationship they have with the crew. I love that, and I really hope that gets focused on even more in the future. But back with the crew, they go on the boat and they're talking about how they miss Vivi. I do too. They were crying. I was too. I miss Vivi deeply. But then we see that they have a stowaway on board. Robin. Robin stowed away on board, and we see that Luffy had saved her from the rubble beforehand in the whole commotion, and the crew are totally struck with fear, which is obvious why, given what she had done prior, but Luffy just goes, "Oh, it's you," with no fear whatsoever. He intuitively understands, as he always does, that she isn't a bad person somehow. And Robin then says to Luffy that you did something to me, and she suffered a lot because of it, and now he has to take responsibility, which is a really interesting way of phrasing things and makes you wonder, what did he do? Excuse me? He's confused, he doesn't know what's going on. And then she says that she wants to join the crew. And a really cool detail here is the contrast between her first appearance. If you'll recall, it was pointed out to me that, yeah, if you think back to there, she stole Luffy's hat. Obviously, it symbolizes a lot for Luffy in particular, in his connection to Shanks and whatever, but it also symbolizes something for the crew. Luffy tends to give it and trust it to people that are part of the crew that he trusts his dreams with. And it's like, if you think back to Arlong Park, I said him putting the hat on Nami was like this symbol of induction into the crew for her, officially. He also gives it to Vivi. He entrusts it to Vivi on, I think, Little Garden. So the hat being given to other members of the crew is Luffy kind of showing that he accepts them into it. But Robin, from the beginning, forcibly took it from him as a show of power and authority, but it comes back full circle as she forcibly puts herself into the crew. And it's a big, interesting contrast between Nami and Robin in this way. So she's associated with the hat in that way, and that makes me think her role in the crew is still quite uneasy. It's not, she hasn't wholeheartedly been embraced, and she hasn't embraced them. She hasn't been fully embraced. I don't think she's been fully inducted into it. I think there will be a moment where she is, similar to Nami, but I think that despite her being part of it, she's not really a part of it, if you get what I mean, just yet. And so the fact that the Straw Hat is still associated with her makes me think that down the line there will be some sort of sharing of dreams there, as has been associated with everyone that Luffy gives the hat to. Will it be forcibly done? Or will it become natural and organic between her and the relationships with everyone? We'll see. So that's the end of chapter 217, but I was advised that I should do 218 for a bit more of a better stopping point, and I agree, it was a good thing to do. So just to quickly talk about 218 now, to end things off. Hachi opens his octopus fritter shop with Kami, or Kamie. Cannibalism, nice. Just to bookend, I guess, the Hachi cover story stuff. But we have a flashback to Robin and Cobra in the midst of the mausoleum tumbling down, where Robin gave Cobra the antidote for Luffy's poison to use on Luffy, or Croc's poison to use on Luffy. And this is not out of character for Robin, or out of left field, really. She has saved other people before. She saved Luffy before from the quicksand. She seems to have not properly killed Igaram. So it again all adds to her there being much more to this than there seems to be. She seems to have this soft center buried very deep underneath. And also it's established here that when she read out the history of Alabasta to Sir Crocodile on the poneglyph, that actually was totally made up. That wasn't on the stone at all. It actually had the info about the Pluton, but she didn't say anything to Sir Crocodile. And so essentially, indirectly, or maybe directly, either way, she saved the kingdom by not doing that, by withholding that. Again, that is the sign of a decent person. But there are also some interesting details to glean from this then, knowing that it did have the Pluton stuff on it. Because one, it shows that Robin is very educated. She knew the history of Alabasta, the completely correct history of Alabasta, and she recited it to Sir Crocodile, making it up, like by memory. So she's very educated in this, of the history. As we know, she's an archaeologist, so that is probably the core of where a lot of this comes from, and a bit of a history buff, I suppose. Interesting. And then she said to Cobra initially, is that all there is to this? So she's looking for something else. But she couldn't let Sir Crocodile have that power. And so when asked by Cobra about what she's doing, she says that she's looking for the real poneglyph that will reveal the real history. She's been searching for it for 20 years. And this was her last hope, but it wasn't it. And that's why she asked him, is this all there is? And so it makes me wonder, like, what true history? What is she actually looking for? There are tons of questions here, but just enough is revealed here to really pull you in and want you to know more about her. And she says, but now she's just tired. This has been failure. She's ready to die here. And she's fatigued, and she tears up here. The most emotion we see from her, saying that there's too many obstacles between her and her dream. Someone with a dream? On this crew? But then Cobra wonders if the poneglyphs tell of an untold history or something like that. Then they get interrupted by the rubble falling down. And then Luffy, despite her saying she wants to be left for dead, saves her. She says to leave her to die. Luffy says, no, screw that. I'm taking you with me. And so that was his crime towards her, letting her live, and that's what he's going to pay her back for. The crew question it back in the present and wonder if that's a good idea, but Luffy says it'll be fine. She's not a bad person. Again, his intuition. And then we learn, yeah, she was an archaeologist. She hid from the government. She got a bounty at that young age. That's all true. But interestingly enough, she doesn't recount the detail that was said by Tashigi's men about the 6 Navy ships that she sunk. So I wonder if there's more to that. Her attitude towards that whole thing is interesting. And she says, I'll be an asset. I'm very resourceful, and my specialty is assassination. Interesting. And the crew members are hesitant, but she's very smooth in adhering herself to her. She tells a lot of them exactly what they need to do, and slowly, they begin accepting her in. For instance, she appeases Nami with gems, she shows Luffy and Chopper and Usopp her powers, which makes them think she's cool and draws them in. Sanji just loves her because he's a simp for hot women, and Zoro's the only one who's not fooled. So, it's interesting. Zoro and her have this distance between them, and Zoro is not taken in by her. He doesn't trust her. And it's again another instance of this Zoro contrast. But Robin asks Zoro if the crew is always like this chaotic, this spirited, and he says, yep. And she just smiles. I think that's, again, it seemed like a genuine smile. It seemed like her true self, maybe, that soft side peeking through. It seemed like the first genuine smile I saw from her in the story. It feels like the mask fell off there a little bit. But admittedly, I could be getting fooled by her. She's very smooth. She's a smooth operator, so maybe she's fooling me as well. I'm not sure what Robin's role will be in the future, but there are lots of mysteries, lots of questions to be answered, and I really can't wait. But suddenly, bits of something are falling down on the Going Merry, and the crew wonder what it is, and they look up, and it turns out not to be any sort of precipitation or anything, but a full-sized boat, galleon, falling from the sky. Tons of pieces fall down, a skeleton falls down, and the Straw Hats are going, what the hell is going on? And Nami realizes that her log pose is pointing up, and she worries that it's broken or something, but then Robin says no. This just indicates that there is an island in the sky, a sky island. I talked earlier in, I think, the Whiskey Peak Little Garden Reverse Mountain video about how the only ceiling on the creativity of these places is Oda's own imagination, right? Which we've seen as boundless. And so here's another great example of such an imaginative idea for an island in the sky. I don't know how that's going to work, but I can't wait to see how that gets tackled. How are they going to get up there? They're obviously going to explore it, I guess, if it's there. So I'm really excited. But thus ends my Alabasta review. It's been a long journey through part 1 and part 2, but I hope you guys have enjoyed. This is the best arc. There's no doubt about it for me, this is the best arc so far. It's got the best spread, the best moment. I think it's got the most to it. It's the largest scale. It's got the most payoff. There was the most hinging on this, and it paid it all off, I think, really well. It has amazing, really good world building for not only Alabasta itself within the island, but the implications on the rest of the setting as a whole. It had great stuff for Smoker and Tashigi, substantiating them a ton. The awesome stuff for Ace in the beginning. The stuff for Vivi. Sir Crocodile, very effective villain. Coda and Toto introduced. What it does with the theme of hope and connection, and the antithesis of that, and the hints at Robin and her backstory, and Sir Crocodile and his backstory. And then, of course, the crew gets all the crew gets moments. I think every single one gets at least a pretty big moment. I think most of them do. I think you could argue maybe that Chopper doesn't, but this is his first arc after his big arc, introductory arc, so I think that makes sense, and he had tons of utility throughout, which I enjoyed a lot. But if I had to say the highlight of all the crew's moments, obviously there's Luffy, that's a given, but for me, I think it's got to be Usopp. I think it's got to be Usopp's fight and what he did to try to protect the disrespect that was being shown to Luffy's dream, and how he showed that to Chopper and all of that. It was beautiful. But yup, there's that theme of hope and trust and togetherness, and how that encapsulates the heart of a leader versus the opposite of that, the antithesis of that, and how that can prevail and empower you. Fighting to protect others, the nature of what a thriving kingdom entails, the people, the togetherness, the sacrifices for this hope, and the enduring nature of that hope. These bonds, they're ever present between the king and his people in Alabasta, between father and daughter and father and royal guards, between the crew and Vivi and the crew in Alabasta and Cobra. These bonds will never be severed. They'll always be there. No matter how far the distance is, they will always be with each other, and I think that's shown beautifully through that spread. They'll never be forgotten. The crew are a rolling stone, you know, and they'll go where their heart takes them. But they did something lasting and permanent that will forever change the history of Alabasta in a positive way. And those who know of this, Cobra, Vivi, Shaka, I guess Pell as well, those who know will express that appreciation, and that's all the crew need. They did it because they wanted to. They did it for their friend and her treasure, and they needed no congratulations. They just needed some party, some food, some fun times, and then they set off again. Some miscellaneous notes. Luffy did beat Sir Crocodile, so yeah, like I said, that was surprising to me, but I think the way it came about was very effective, and I think it shows that Luffy was able to overcome this weakness. Like Sir Crocodile said, people like him are very common on the Grand Line, and I think that would have been established as kind of truer and a bit more valid if he was not able to beat Sir Crocodile here, but he was. He absolutely was, and I think this distinguishes Luffy then, as a result, as special, even within the context of the Grand Line. Not that he's the strongest, obviously he still has a ways to go, but I think that means something, and I think for Zoro as well. With his quest, and how he was able to gain this broader understanding of all things. And then for the saga as a whole, I guess this was the end of the Alabasta saga. Like I said, I think it works. It obviously works as the first step into the grander world for the crew, but it also works as a story for Vivi, a coming of age for Vivi, as arguably the primary protagonist maybe outside of Luffy. I really do think that. I'm a Vivi fanboy, and I'm not saying that because of any preconceived bias or anything. This is just what Oda presented to us. He gave us this protagonistic viewpoint of a girl who wanted to do her best to save her ailing kingdom, who learns and grows and sees despair and is nonetheless able to fight past it and see the light with the help of the people she's come to love, her family. And through this, we get some nice establishment, not just for this, but stuff later on. There's still Raftel, there's still the stuff with Whitebeard, Smoker and Tashigi and the Navy and everything, that's gonna bubble in the distance. What's going on with Robin? Shanks and Mihawk are still in the background. We have the world government still, we have the rest of the warlords, this Sky Island now, what's going on there? Blackbeard, Whitebeard, Ace. I don't know, there's so many things that are hinted at and established. And we got introduced to a new crew member in an amazing arc, Drum Island. We got some great moments for basically every member. I think, to me, Usopp is the crewmate outside of Luffy and Vivi that I think struck me the most, but all of them had great stuff, and they all grow together, and they interact more, and they grow bonds, and they grow stronger with one another. And they now have a new and interesting crewmate, and it's a brave new world as they go out to tackle the unknown. Overall, this arc is a light 9 for me. It's the first time I'm saying, yeah, this is a 9. I think I've got to give it a 9, for sure. It's my favorite. Better than Arlong Park, better than Drum Island. It's my number 1, it's my new number 1, and it was a fantastic experience. Thank you to everyone who, through the streams and through the comments and everything, shared it with me. It was honestly very wonderful. But to give you then my top 15 favorite characters at this point, it's been a bit of a shakeup. To start with the honorable mentions, we have some who are almost making it into the top 15, but not quite. Dalton, he's still great, but just outside of it now. Ace, he's been rising. Lots of intrigue around this guy. I like him a lot. Once he gets more substantiated, I think it'll be a shoo-in to be a favorite, but we'll see how it goes. Tashigi, she had great growth, but not quite enough to be into my top 15. And Robin as well. She's very interesting, tons of intrigue, but again, I think I want to dive a bit more into the meat of her character before concluding that she's a top 15 or on this list just yet, but she's very close to it. I love how much she added to the plot and how much she consistently keeps me on my toes and keeps me guessing. And she would probably be number 16, honestly. She's right there. But yeah, I'll wait a bit more to see a bit more from her before concluding and putting her in there. I'm sure she's going to be there eventually. But my top 15 then would be from 15 up. Number 15 is Cobra, who makes his way onto the list. Yeah, I think he's a great king. That questionable moment in the bathhouse aside, he had consistent great leadership and I loved everything about him. And I think Alabasta and Vivi and his great royal guards and everyone, Shaka Pell, they're a reflection of him as a person and his ideals. A really cool character. Oh, another honorable mention I forgot to mention, Toto. Toto's an honorable mention as well. Number 14 would be Zeph. Number 13, who surprised me with how good I thought he was Koza. Koza, like I said, I think is a very, very important, I said this in part 1, very, very important face for the human side of the rebellion, and why people whose heart may be in the right place and who love their kingdom would nonetheless be manipulated into doing what they did. Very heartbreaking in some ways, but very genuine and an empowering conclusion. I thought Koza was very, very effective. Mihawk would be number 12. Sir Crocodile would be number 11. Don't have much to add, but very effective antagonist, great antithesis, some nice bits of intrigue for his backstory, potential backstory stuff there. I'm sure we'll see him in the future. Hiruluk would be number 10. Shanks would be number 9. Chopper would be number 8. Sanji would be number 7. And, might surprise some people, Smoker is my number 6. Yeah, I don't have much to add from what I've already said about him, but yeah, he is, I have him ahead of 2 Straw Hats as it stands. I think he's awesome. I love his conviction and his sense of justice and how he consistently changes and how his relationship with Luffy and the crew is so dynamic and flexible. And I love his relationship with Tashigi. I love the way he just sticks it to the brass and follows his own sense of justice and conviction. I love that he wanted to protect Tashigi and stop her from crying and inspire her to do more. And I want even more from him. I want to know more about him. I want to see more from him. Smoker's awesome, and he's my number 6. Nami would then be my number 5. Some great stuff for her. And then Zoro would be my number 4. Some great moments for him. Vivi, huge jump up from number 10 to 3. Vivi's my number 3. I'm very confident in that. At this point in the story, she's my 3rd favorite character, without a doubt. I love Vivi. I think I made that clear. Hopefully through these video series, I don't know if this is a popular take or not, but hopefully through this video series, even if you don't agree, you can understand where I'm coming from when I say that she is just absolutely wonderful. I'm going to miss her a ton, but I hope we revisit her and Alabasta in the future, and when we do, I'll probably be very emotional. It's honestly quite close between number 2 and 1. Number 2 is Usopp, and number 1 is Luffy. Still sticking to that number 1 spot, but honestly, it's pretty close between him and Usopp at the moment. But yeah, that's my top 15, from bottom to top. Number 15 is Cobra, number 14 Zeph, number 13 Koza, number 12 Mihawk, number 11 Sir Crocodile, number 10 Hiraluk, number 9 Shanks, number 8 Chopper, number 7 Sanji, number 6 Smoker, number 5 Nami, number 4 Zoro, number 3 Vivi, number 2 Usopp, number 1 Luffy. That's all I got, guys. I'm pooped. I've talked for a long time. I hope you've enjoyed sincerely. Thank you for sticking with me. Thank you for all the support in the streams, I really appreciate it. Long may it continue as we go into the next arc, the next saga, and on and on and on. Thank you so much. If you'd like to see my next video on the next arc, I don't know what it is at the moment, but if you'd like to see the next video, if you'd like early access to that, you can sign up for that on my Patreon. That's currently available to $5 plus patrons. All you gotta do is just sign up for that. Long form video is at your disposal for the next arc if you're interested. If you're interested in following my journey through it as I read through every chapter live, you can follow me on Twitch, where we stream chapters every Sunday, and some Fridays as well. If you want to join the Discord, where people talk about One Piece and anime in general and whatever, anime, manga, anything, my experience on stream with video games that I play, or with my One Piece reads, or things that don't have to do with me, whatever, it's a good time on there. You can check out my Discord, which is linked in the description and pinned comment. And then lastly, just a reminder, if you want your comment to be highlighted in a future video, just be sure to use the hashtag AJPiece somewhere in there. This is an amazing arc, my favorite so far. I can't wait to see where the story goes from here, and many thanks for watching. See you guys.